tale opened with a monster's roar echoing from the forest depths. Laffy, a red-haired girl, swiftly slices the beast in two. Still, something weighed on Lappy's mind. Her friend Wrath, upon seeing her wounded, apply Elixir to her injury. Laffy scolded him for using such a valuable potion on a minor scratch, but Wraith thought differently. Confused by her reaction, he realized he could just make more. Wraith and Alchemist worried Lappies. Elixirs that can heal any injury. They were incredibly rare, and only a few alchemists could produce them even after years of effort, often without success. Buying even one was nearly impossible, because a lifetime of work might not earn enough gold. Laffy once spent all her savings to buy an elixir, only to discover the sole vial available had been reserved for a noble. Laffy, desperate to get the elixir for her sister, begged the seller and offered to do anything, but he refused, saying his business came first. Rejected, she began to leave, bumped into a frail man who collapsed against her, and asked if he was okay. His stomach let out a loud rumble. When Luffy brought food to the angry man, the man gratefully revealed he was an alchemist. He offered to repay her kindness by making anything she wanted through alchemy. She asked for an elixir on impulse, but doubted he could do it while so starved. She was surprised when Wrath agreed and gave her a real elixir. Stunned, she laughed and asked where he got it, and Wrath casually admitted he made it. After examining the elixir, she confirmed it was genuine by its color and by a magical aura that matched a sheet she had seen in a shop. Overwhelmed by its value, Lassie offered to pay any price for it. Rather reminded her it was his way of saying thanks for the bread she had given him. Still eager to help, she asked whether he needed help selling potions. While they walked, he said it was his first time in the capital and that his wallet had been stolen, leaving him with no money. Luffy escorted Wrath to the Adventurers Guild. When they stepped inside, the guild buzzed about Laffy, an S-ranked adventurer, and Wraith asked if she was well known. She said fame was unavoidable at her rank. Amelia, the receptionist at the counter, greeted Lathe warmly. When Wraith introduced himself, Amelia teased him about being Lathe's boyfriend. Laughing to hide her embarrassment, she said she had only helped Wrath after finding him in your collapse. Her fierce denial slightly offended him. Wrath then explained their purpose: putting an elixir on the counter to sell it. Laffy was stunned, because alchemists spent their whole lives striving for a single elixir, yet Wraith produced two as if making them were trivial. Her interest in Wraith grew. Amelia confirmed the elixir was genuine and asked if he was sure about selling such a treasure. Ray casually revealed 4 more elixirs, saying he had plenty. Amelia reacted loudly and drew the guild's attention. Alarmed, Lathe pulled the Wraith toward the exit and demanded an explanation. Puzzled, Wraith brushed off the fuss and said they were just elixirs he'd made. Lathe insisted he had extraordinary alchemical skill. She warned him that dangerous people could target him if they learned of his talent and urged him not to sell his elixirs, but Wraith protested. He said he had nothing left to sell. Unable to find another option, Lackey decided to stay at her house that night. He felt responsible for stopping his momentum. Wraith remained unbothered. He was simply glad to have a place to stay, even if it meant staying with a girl. Located at Lafayette House, Wrath was amazed at how large the residents were. Lathe showed up with a young girl, introducing Sylvia as her younger sister. They laughed at the offer to make tea, but a silly volunteer still offered to help. Laffy insisted she rest so her health would not get worse. Sylvia sat quietly across from Wraith while Lafayette went to make the tea. The silence turned awkward, and Wrath didn't know what to say. Sylvie thanked him when he asked why. She explained he had given her sister a precious elixir. Laffy had helped him first, he said, so he owed her thanks. She still insisted on thanking him. Sylvia said Lathe worked tirelessly to help her. Wrath was confused when Sylvia told him that Lathe was desperately searching for a cure for her illness. Ray realized why Laffy seemed so driven and told Sylvia she had an amazing sister. Sylvia beamed, agreeing that Lathe was the greatest sister in the world. Wraith chuckled because Sylvia had seemed so mature at first. It turned out she was only 15. May Wraith Wisherus cover you. Sylvia smiled. From behind the door, Laffy overheard and smiled too. The next day, Wraith began brewing potions. Lathe asked why, and he said that since she told him not to sell elixirs, he decided to make potions instead. Sylvie asked how long it usually took to make potions. Laffy estimated about an hour per vial, depending on the potion. Wrath, however, said it took him only seconds to make a medium-quality potion. Lackey tugged at Sylvia's side. He warned her not to believe him, since only someone as unusual as Wraith could make a potion that fast. While they bickered, Sully giggled and called Wrath odd. Wrath opened his bag, took out the ingredients, and let Lathe watch. They watched him close his eyes, focus, and recite the extract. Purify, assemble the components, sublimate. Almost instantly the potion was finished, just as he said. At their first glimpse of alchemy, the sisters were amazed by its perfection. For Ray, though, it was routine. He was unaware of how valuable his skills were. Aiming for a mid-grade potion, he ended up with a top-quality brew. Holding back slightly at first, he realized making many of them could solve his financial worries. Sylvia said she now understood her sister's earlier comments. Later at the Ventures Guild, Wrath called out to Amelia. Apologize for yesterday and offer a new item for sale. Holding up the high-quality potion, he asked whether she would buy it. Amelia grins. He wanted to discuss the previous day first. Laffey suggested they save it for later. Amelia offered 3 gold coins in exchange for 15 high-quality potions. Monsters were appearing more often, and potions were in short supply, a situation that far exceeded expectations. Relieved, Wrath looked forward to staying at an inn, asked Lathe what she was doing, and she said it had been a while since she had taken a guild request. Make requests varied, including herb gathering, monster extermination, and non-combat tasks like finding lost cats or making potions. Wraith smirked at Laffey's details and second-guessed her choices. Signing up as an adventurer appealed to her, and she noticed the rewards offered. Lapti weighed the risks. If someone requested elixirs or anything impractical, Wraith might be exposed, so she decided to watch him closely and step in if necessary. Amelia told Wrath he now had a rank and could advance to rank D even without taking on extermination tasks. Lathe suggested. Although he accepts requests unrelated to alchemy, Wrath's top pick was alchemy-related. She tried to sway him with a request about a cat, but he remained firm in his decision. Amelia warned that the alchemy request was unwise because the client was peculiar. No one had been able to fulfill it, so it was a risky choice. Ray ignored both her and Laffey and insisted on taking it. Amelia checked he understood her warning, and he confirmed he did, but remained intrigued by the challenge. Reither ride at the client's house. Remembering Lathe's concern for him, he was determined to complete the request smoothly to ease her worries. At the door, he knocked and said he was there for the request. A young girl greeted him and told him to follow her so they could begin immediately. Wrath assumed the girl was only helping, but Daisy clarified she had posted the request. He was about the same age. After he apologized for thinking she was younger, she snapped at him to be quiet and follow. They stepped into a room where Daisy explained that he would extract and purify herbs for her. Daisy said extracting means distilling herbs into a liquid that holds their properties, and purifying means removing impurities from that liquid. Urged as many as possible to join the process. A sly, menacing smile made Wraith feel the weight of the task. Wraith started. His efficiency and precision were at least 50 times greater than an average alchemist's. After some time, Rave wondered if he'd done enough but kept following Daisy's instructions, completed his first request with ease, hoped to earn Laptis's praise and prove he could handle such tasks alone, and pressed on. Later, Daisy noticed how late it was and checked whether he was slacking. Opening the door, she casually offered a short break if he needed one. Daisy froze when she saw the room full of processed herbs. Everything was made from the ingredients provided, and she shouted, demanding to know how he had done so much so quickly. Wrath said calmly he only used standard alchemy. Feeling inferior, Daisy insisted that being normal did not explain his speed, and she kept shouting as she demanded he explain his method. Wraith effortlessly demonstrated how to extract and purify herbs. Treating it like routine alchemy, he left Daisy trembling. Overwhelmed, she fainted. When she woke up, she was lying on Wrath, surprised by how close they were. Realizing where they stood, Daisy slapped Wrath. Blushing, she scolded him, saying that closeness was meant for someone you love. Wrath apologized, explaining he couldn't leave her unconscious on the floor. Daisy accepted his explanation, then looked around the room to make sure the incredible work wasn't a dream. She praised Wreath's genuine talent and wondered why he wasn't better known. Only recently arrived in the capital, he explained he had earlier been studying alchemy in the countryside. Intrigued, Daisy asked Wrath for a favor. She asked him to visit occasionally to help her and teach her alchemy. Taken aback by the request, Wrath hesitated because he had never taught anyone before. The idea intrigued him, so he agreed. Daisy handed him a request form and he signed it. Promising to take it to the guild right away, he left. Wraith completed his first guild request and unexpectedly agreed to teach Daisy alchemy. At the guild, Amelia congratulated Wrath on completing the task. When she realized he had succeeded, she gave him a gold coin as a reward. Wrath boasted to Laffey that he handled the request alone, and Laffey, unimpressed, sharply asked him to repeat himself, which made Wrath freeze. 30 minutes earlier, Wraith arrived at the guild with the completed request. Admitting the work was hard because the request asked him to do as much as possible and left him unsure when to stop. He kept working until he filled an entire room, and the client was so stunned by the result that she fainted. After the incident, Wraith agreed to teach the client alchemy. After thinking it over, he admitted he may have gone too far. Laffey said it was serious, noting he had caused the client to faint and that he suspected the client was exploiting him. She said the client had convinced him to regularly help with her ambitious alchemy projects and teach her the craft. For the client, this seemed like an ideal outcome. Rafe started to understand what her slay smile meant. Laffey says kindness is valuable, but he should be more careful and recognize his own worth. Ray admitted it was hard for him to see his own worth. In the next chapter, two adventurers talk about a rumor involving an alchemist. One adventure told of an alchemist who arrived at the guild carrying many elixirs. Doubting whether it was true, the other dismissed it as fake. While talking, they heard a strange sound. A few days after becoming an adventurer, Wraith accepted Daisy's request at her shop. He told her it was hard to figure out his own worth. Startled by his sudden comment, Daisy asked what had prompted it. Wrath said a friend told him to value himself more, but he didn't know how. Daisy did not know he had friends, and Wrath was surprised. He couldn't believe she saw him as a lonely outcast. Daisy stressed the need for moderation in actions. Wraith asked for more details. Selling a large number of elixirs at once would attract unwanted attention, so she recommended limiting sales to 1 elixir per year. Selling them quietly would keep others from noticing. Daisy pointed out that elixirs could save lives, but drawing attention would be dangerous. Only a fool would try to sell a large batch of precious elixirs at once. Wanting to know more, she asked whether Wrath made elixirs and said she wanted to learn to make them. Wrath agreed to teach her and asked her to demonstrate extraction, purification, component setup, and sublimation. Full of confidence, Daisy told him to watch closely. Ray taught her alchemy for the first time, a moment Daisy had eagerly awaited. She focused and quickly made an excellent potion. Wrath seemed impressed, and Daisy was thrilled. His remark that her knowledge was lacking stunned her. Annoyed, Daisy demanded he repeat it. Wraith clarified that although Daisy knew the basics, he meant the deeper knowledge in books. Chakra grows only in areas with dense atmospheric mana. It is a key ingredient in elixirs and high potions, but herbal and botanical texts rarely mention it. Unaware of its background, she now had to learn. Rafe set several books on the table and told her to start studying. It surprised her that he was making her study so seriously. She asked whether studying would improve her alchemy skills. He countered, asking if she knew about the herb. She said it was mainly used to stop bleeding. It worked best crushed and applied directly to a wound. Wraith confirmed she was right. Alchemists enhance its clotting power to brew a potion that heals wounds. He presented 2 potions to her, one she had made from lamu and one he had crafted. Daisy examined them and noted his potion was high quality, while hers was medium quality. Wrath asked if she could tell what they did differently, but she couldn't. He explained the difference was in visualizing the process of refining the herb's components, and how they applied that visualization changed the quality of the potions. Mastering any skill required study. Next, Sylvia greeted Wrath warmly, having heard from her sister that he had become an adventurer. He only accepted alchemy tasks, so he didn't think of himself as an adventurer. Sylvia joked that she hoped Lathe hadn't mentioned the fainting, then Lathe appeared and asked how he was doing. Wearing a Lathe-worn apron that made her hard to recognize, she playfully scolded Wrath, reminded him she was still a girl, and he apologized. She set the pot down on the table and urged everyone to eat before the food cooled. Wraith said he hadn't come to eat, but Lackey insisted that as their guest he would join them. Sylvia apologized to Lathe for leaving her to do all the work, but Lathe brushed it off, saying she hadn't fully recovered. It was Lathe's first time making the dish, and she thought it turned out well. Over their meal, Lathe asked Wrath how he was, and Wrath said he'd started teaching Daisy alchemy, so Lathe wondered whether Wrath would teach her the same way he'd been taught. Wrath said it would probably take anywhere from days to decades to reach that level. Sylvia asked whether he had taught himself alchemy. His mood darkened when he mentioned having a mentor. When she inquired about them, he said they were completely hopeless. He recalled his mentor throwing him into dangerous situations with beasts as a child to train him and never helping with chores. The mentor was wasteful, an eccentric drunk, and completely unreliable. He said he did not want to see them again. After dinner, as Wrath was about to leave, Sylvia stalked him. Expressing deep gratitude, she said, "He saved her sister's life with his elixir." Rate gave a small smile. He was glad he could help. Then he walked toward his inn. After finishing Daisy's request, he planned to visit the guild and noticed a crowd. He moved closer to see what was going on. Spotting Amelia, he rushed over when she urgently asked for his help. Two adventurers were injured at the town entrance, one critically. Wraith hesitated since Emilio already knew about his elixir. Using it in public could be risky. He remembered Laddie's warning that dangerous people would target him for his abilities. Wraith decided to act in Amelia to guide him to the injured. He could not ignore people he could save. She hurried him to the town entrance. There he saw the gravely wounded woman. After examining her, he found she was suffering from blood loss, rot, and poisoning. He handed the man supporting her a green potion to stop the bleeding and an elixir for the wound. He did not have an antidote for the poison. While others wondered who he was, he quickly prepared an antidote for the poison and gave it to her. Having taken all 3 potions, the one who was healed, the whole town was amazed and overjoyed that a life had been saved, and many people had seen Wraith heal the girl's injuries. Wrath received many direct requests for his services. He should have foreseen the complications, and he admitted it was an even bigger hassle than when he was penniless. After reviewing the requests, Wraith found most came from people asking him to make or sell elixirs. Many were collectors or wealthy people who were not ill or injured. The woman he had healed came to thank him for curing her with the elixir and vowed to repay him, even if it took her entire life. Wrath said he used the elixir without her permission, so he wasn't expecting any payment. She insisted on doing something for him, so he asked her to help if he ever needed it. Agreeing, she left the room. Too preoccupied at the time, he forgot, and she reminded him he had used his abilities to save someone. From then on, Rafe sold elixirs only to those who truly needed them. He also sought other ways to help people without using elixirs. He started working at the hospital to treat patients, but the job soon left him drained. He had nearly cleared the backlog of requests, but he was nearly out of ingredients. This could mean he needs to go home for the first time in a while to restock. Otherwise, he couldn't take on more requests. At the Adventurers Guild, Rafe reported he had completed the requests. Amelia told him about a direct request from a high-ranking noble. Wrath examined the request, and Amelia pointed out it came from the Radium family, whose plea he had refused before. He considered refusing again, but she said they were waiting outside to escort him. The Radium family will arrive shortly. One of the kingdom's 4 great noble families comes from an ancient, honorable line tied to the country's founders, and besides supporting the royal family, they handled wide-ranging duties like overseeing lands and foreign relations, while keeping ties to the Adventurers Guild. Amelia wished him luck, and Wrath returned a warm smile. All he really wanted was to go home and sleep, rather than face their mansion. Wraith inspected the mansion's exterior. A maid met him at the door and led him inside. Knocking on the door, she announced rates to rival the competition. Wraith wondered if the master would heed his words, and when he heard the master's voice his heart raced, and he grew more anxious as they entered the room. A handsome young man said his name was Will's Requiem. Rafe introduced himself too, and they started chatting. Wrath would rather have gone home than stand there chatting. Will straightened up, feeling no need for formalities, and asked if Wrath intended to sell him an elixir. Rate smiled and declined. When Will offered 300 gold coins, Ruth refused again. Even when Will offered his family's support, they still refused. Will acknowledged the firm's stance on rates and moved to another question. Will asked whether Wraith had taught himself alchemy, and Wraith said he had a mentor when Will asked who it was. Rafe warned that knowing would do no good, and added that his teacher was an alchemist named Lucia. Will's face changed, and he asked whether Ruth meant the fallen hero. Wraith was shocked to learn the rumors had reached the capital. Will smiled, pointing out that if Wraith was Lurie's disciple, it would explain a lot. Thanking Wrath for his time, he offered to arrange a carriage to take him back. Wrath declined because he had another destination in mind. Will smiled, offered his hand, and said he hoped they'd have a positive relationship going forward. They greeted each other with a handshake. Wrath left the city mansion. Buried under recent requests, Wrath hadn't had a moment to himself and was down to a single elixir from the constant demand. Having used up much of his supplies, he decided to go shopping that day. While he was out, he ran into Sylvia and Laffy. Wrath had made it possible for Sylvia to go outside, and he saw something in her hand and asked about it. She explained the staff boosted her magic and revealed she was also an adventurer. Intrigued, he asked what her adventure rank was. Stunned to learn Sylvia was an S-rank adventurer, he asked whether they were going on a mission, and laughing said they had just returned from defeating a water dragon. Monsters in this world were ranked by their strength. SS is the highest and F the lowest, but even the weakest dragon was at least S rank. Realizing a single dragon could wipe out an entire nation, Ray thought that although Sylvia called him abnormal, she was doing some extraordinary things too. Their chat ended, and the girls went to Daisy's place. While they walked, he thought only about the origins of his race and whether he had always been alone. He reminded her he had a mentor, so he wasn't alone, and she asked why, saying she was curious and that Wrath was impressive but never shared much about himself, while Laffy added they hadn't told Wrath much about themselves either. They wondered if he'd be surprised to learn they weren't really sisters. Lathe expected to be even more surprised to hear how different she used to be from how she is now. Sylvia was a girl kidnapped by goblins who laughed as they took her, and she could remember only her name. Lafayette, seeing she had no family, took her in as a sister, and they began living together. Sylvia thought she relied on Lathe, but when Lathe asked her to use magic to carry their things to the carriage, it proved otherwise, though this was normally simple for her. Suddenly she froze and collapsed. Lathe felt confused and worried about what was happening. Sylvia had expected the elixir to heal her, but she could not move. Lathe held Sylvia while she remained worried about the luggage. Lackey didn't care about the luggage and wanted help with the rates. Wrath approached Daisy's shop. Taking a different route, he arrived safely and was becoming familiar with the capital. It was his first time at Daisy's shop as a customer, and he couldn't imagine what it would be like. Daisy would be thrilled to see him. He pictured her expression before entering when the doors would not open. Daisy welcomed her customer with a bright smile. Seeing him, she stopped pretending. She noted it was rare for him to visit without her asking for something, and he explained he was low on ingredients and needed to restock. Daisy realized he was busy saving people with his elixirs and doing other tasks. She pressed him to explain why he kept consulting her and urged him to see his own worth, and it was harder than it looked. Wraith gathered the ingredients he needed. Daisy said it would cost 2 silver coins and smiled at him like a regular customer. Wrath admired her polished customer service smile. Daisy asked what he planned to make with the ingredients. He said he was thinking about making an appointment. She warned that producing such things would upset the herbalists, and if an alchemist like him made better medicines, they would lose their jobs. Wrath didn't mind because he'd heard herbalists disliked his mentor too. Daisy noticed he didn't seem bothered, so she told him the adventure he had saved was attacked in an unusual place. Wrath didn't know this, even though he was the one who saved them. The attack occurred near an empty house, in an area where monsters had never been reported. That wound had both poison and rot, and many monsters could poison, but only a few could cause rot. The likely causes were an undead monster or a special weapon. No one knew exactly why monsters appeared, but people believed they emerged in places with dense mana. Strange things sometimes happen. Wraith bought some ingredients and left the shop, and as he opened the door, a hand grabbed him and started to pull him. Lathe apologized as he tugged him along. They promised to explain later. She took him to her house, where Wrath examined Sylvia, who was ill again. Lathe, an S-ranked adventurer, felt crushing guilt for failing to save someone and was about to plead with Wraith for help. Wraith interrupted her, reassuring her that Sylvia would be fine. With a smile, he vowed to save her. Luffy gasped, bowed, and thanked Wrath, who explained that Sylvia could not move because of a condition called magic crystal disease. Magic crystal disease caused magical energy to crystallize inside the body, paralyzing the person it affected. The elixir given to Sylvia only slowed the disease and did not cure her. Though he'd never faced this illness before, he could make a potion to treat it. He didn't have the necessary ingredients. Luffy offered to gather them, but Wrath said she didn't recognize the herbs. He asked her to come to his house, where monsters roamed, but the ingredients they needed grew. Lathe quickly agreed to help. Crystallization was limited to Sylvia's hands and feet and would take about 7 days to reach her heart. Wrath told Lathe they had about a week before it became life-threatening, so they still had time. They planned to leave the next morning. Wrath had preparations to make, so he went home. Lathe stopped him to thank him. Wraith smiled and walked off. He worked in his home laboratory. Wrath mixed a poison antidote into an ointment and combined a monster-repelling potion with a healing one. At last, he took his ring off and put it on the table. The next morning, Lathe arrived with the carriage. They boarded it and set off to collect the herbs they still needed. Rafe asked if anyone was caring for Sylvia. Lathe said Amelia was watching over her. Wraith figured Amelia was likely helping for Lafay's sake, that Lafay must have humbly begged her to do it, and he couldn't think of anyone better to care for Sylvia now. Wrath had a question after examining Sylvia, noting that magic crystal disease originated in the Northeast, and that wasn't something Sylvie would pick up in the capital. Wraith asked if Sylvie had ever been to the Northeast. Laffy said she had not been there since they met. Lafayette acknowledged they were not biological sisters. Lathe had rescued Sylvia when Sylvia lost her memory and had no family, and took her in. Wraith listened attentively. She spoke so casually, but choosing to do that when she was even younger was no small matter. Because Sylvie has memory loss, she may originally be from the Northeast. Lafayette vowed to remember it and asked where Wraith's house was. Further down the road, Rafe lived in a small wooden house in the forest, an uncommon choice, and his mentor raised him there until she disappeared without explanation. Wrath still wondered where his mentors had gone. They suddenly came across an injured man in the forest. After Wraith treated him, the man asked if they were going into the forest. After they confirmed, he advised against it. The man said he had been attacked by a blood wolf and barely escaped. Lathe asked about the monster. After thanking the man, they explained the main reasons to continue. Before long, they reached the forest where Wraith lived. They started walking. Monsters made carriage travel unsafe, so they stayed quiet and moved cautiously while Wraith warned Lathe of the possible creatures. S-ranked adventurer Lathe stayed fully alert, ready to fight at a moment's notice, her eyes sweeping the area. Halfway to his house, they had seen no monsters, but Wrath expected one to appear soon. A cold sensation hit his head, and laughing warned him moments before he died. Before an explosion happened, Wrath barely avoided an attack by a C-ranked blood wolf. It wasn't alone, they were surrounded despite the danger. Wraith stayed calm and admitted he was used to this, but inside he was terrified and wanted to flee. Lathe heard his desire to escape, started attacking the wolves. She planned for Wraith to run and hide while she held them off. She said even she could not fight so many while protecting him. Wraith, who had worried for her, was removed. Slicing through the walls, she felt her strength. Feeling useless, he fled to find a hiding spot while Lathy fought the blood wolves. Ray felt pathetic as he hid when more blood wolves suddenly appeared. You ran away from them. Many of them moved quickly. He used a potion designed to repel animal-type monsters. Confident it would work, he threw it. But the walls only sniffed it and paused, then resumed chasing him. Sprinting at full speed, he wondered why the potion failed and concluded their sense of smell was dulled. He doused their eyes with the potion, a homemade dye meant to blind them temporarily. He tossed something that disabled their sight and hearing, leaving them disoriented. Exhausted but in a hurry, he had to find Lafay. A crash from the tree he was leaning on startled him. After defeating the wolves, Lafay began searching for him. Hearing a suspicious sound, they rushed toward it, sensing trouble. Cursing his luck, Wraith fled from a burning skeleton. Realizing skeletons had no senses, he knew potions and dyes would be useless, and the over 2-meter skeleton with a sword that could fell a tree was formidable but weak to holy water. Only 3 vials wouldn't do much to slow it, so Wraith came up with another plan. He threw something at the skeleton, and it proved effective. Then he made more potions using his compress and his ability to agitate. Kochina was the substance, and it became adhesive when mixed with water. Lafay searches for Wraith. There was smoke earlier. Wrath had briefly immobilized the skeleton, but he couldn't stop it, and it came after him again. He had to escape and find Lafay. Wraith moved away from the skeleton until it was out of earshot, then sent up a smoke signal. He crushed a fruit core used for dye, added it to a pot of alchemical mixture, and forced it to explode into gas. This failed alchemy process wasn't normally done on purpose, and although he knew the theory, it was his first attempt. Planning to hide, he intended to wait for Lafay and considered climbing a tree. The skeleton's massive sword struck. He shattered his resistance ring, his final defense. Wraith struggled with losing his ring and with that sudden attack. He believed he could have gained more time by using it better, yet had no tricks left, and his energy was fading fast. This felt like the end for him. The skeleton came close, but was stopped just in time. Lathe arrived and unleashed her crush ability, smashing the creature. Lafay's check on Frith went fine, and he blushed slightly, making her giggle at his lack of fear. When he asked if she had lost her sword, she explained she had thrown it at the skeleton's arm earlier. They saw the skeleton regenerating, which meant trouble for Lafay. She told Wrath to stay back and face the skeleton by himself. He thought she had won the she. It survived her attempt to destroy it. The skeleton was casting a spell. She chose to break its magic by force. Attacking with her fracture skills, she left Rafe cradled in her arms like a princess. He was sure he'd never marry after a girl carried him like that. Lafayette said they had to run because they couldn't beat the skeleton, and she asked whether he knew the way to his house. Ray realized they had to focus on getting the ingredients he needed. He guided her while the skeleton chased them. The skeleton suddenly stopped and growled. Wrath watched, trying to figure out what it was doing. Then walls of blood gathered. He warned Laffy that the skeleton was summoning more blood wolves. Laffy planned to fend them off while running and holding him. A blood wolf launched an attack. She cut it while still carrying him. Wraith was amazed again, and Laughter sensed something when he asked. According to her, the blood walls were not alive. Suspecting the skeleton controlled the dead, she pointed to their shadows. Wraiths realized they were being controlled by magic. That was necromancy. The magic controlling the corpses explained why they had no smell, and it was Wraith's first time seeing a skeleton use magic like that. Few monsters could use magic, and dragons, for example, did so with their breath. Controlling corpses was a skill usually limited to powerful mages. If they ranked the skeleton, it will be near the top. Rafe asked what they would do. Latte said they had to fight it, and told him to grab what he needed, while she held off the attackers because they were close to his house. They made it there after running. Lackey set him down, and he went inside while she fought off the wolves. Dust covered the house after being abandoned so long, but he was relieved it wasn't destroyed. Materials on rates were in the basement. Everything was intact, and he wanted more but took only what he needed. The materials he risked everything to gather would prove useful later. A sword caught his eye, reminding him of the time his mentor sent him to collect ingredients. He remembered being beaten up, said he nearly died, and yelled at his mentor for almost getting him killed. Greeting him casually, she ignored how dusty he was and told him to store the ingredients properly. He couldn't believe she'd said that after he returned battered and bruised, and he hadn't heard anything about undead being there. Since she hadn't mentioned it, she acted cute and said she didn't know about the undead either. She insisted undead were easy to handle and only needed holy water. Wraith reminded her he couldn't use magic like she could. If he tried, he'd be torn apart before he could even splash the water. Her taunt was that he'd be a fillet, not minced meat, and it wouldn't matter if he was dead. After that, she offered him a sword as a gift. Made by her long ago and never used, the sword proved highly effective against undead creatures. Wraith lacked skill with a sword. Back in the present, he grabbed the sword, hoping his unreliable mentor could offer some guidance. He thought about handing the sword to Laffey. The moment he stepped outside, his house collapsed. Lathe rushed over in a panic to check if he was okay, and Wrath shouted at her, furious about losing all the ingredients he had worked so hard to gather. He handed her the sword and said it could defeat the enemy, though he hesitantly admitted he hadn't made it. The sword was light. When Lackey hit a skeleton with it, the skeleton failed to regenerate. The sword worked, and the skeleton fled after her strike. Determined, Laffey leaped onto it before it disappeared and finished it. Wraith was amazed, and Lathe modestly pointed out her S-rank status wasn't for nothing, while crediting the sword forged from the skeleton's own body for the victory. After the battle, a large magical gem appeared. Crystallized magical energy, these gems were essential materials for magical devices and were often found in powerful monsters as an energy source. Wrath had never seen a gem like that before, though he had always wanted one for his alchemy, and because such gems were rare and hard to trade, this was his first chance to get one, so securing both the gem and the needed ingredients was a real success. Wrath was devastated to lose the precious belongings buried in his ruined house. The loss hit them hard and could not be undone. After defeating the skeleton and collecting the required ingredients, they had to rush home. 2 days after Sylvia fell, Laffey and Wraith reached the capital. Only 5 days remained to treat Sylvia. Lathe rushed to check on her sisters Amelia and Sylvia, who were both sleeping. Rafe started preparing the potion, while Lackey looked after her sister. Silly's magic crystal disease came from magical energy crystallizing inside her body, so Wraith planned to brew a potion from monster ingredients to absorb that energy. Vito's monster was an SS-ranked creature from the north that drains the magical energy of others. Contact with it could drain energy. Some handlers lost control, were drained, and died, so handling a Vito required magic isolating gloves to prevent unconsciousness. Wraith's mentor had defeated those creatures for her experiments, and he used her leftovers. He rehydrated the Vito, added water, and heated it to purify and sublimate it. Unlike regular potions, medicinal ones left out some ingredients. The key step was sublimation. The aim was to suppress, not enhance, the Vito's energy-absorbing properties, a task only skilled alchemists could carry out deliberately. Ray focused, trusting his skills, as Lafayette watched the room light up. Lafayette watched Wrath work, amazed by his skill and understanding it completely. They trusted him to handle Sylvia's treatment. At last the potion was ready, and Sylvia only had to drink it. Wraith chose not to wake her, and rested briefly at the table until morning. That morning he woke and brought the potion to Lafay. Seeing her, he asked where Amelia was, and Lath said Amelia had just gone home after looking after Sylvia. He told Lafay the potion was ready. It made her so happy she teared up a little. Together, they knocked on Sylvie's door and went into her room. Ones covered Sylvia's body. Wraith the Latvian rushed to her side and wraithed. Wraith examined her, realized the disease was advancing faster than expected, and handed Sylvia the potion, instructing her to drink it. Despite her efforts, the wounds didn't go away. Alarmed, Lafay asked what was wrong, but Wraith 3 assured her the potion works. Take it slowly and don't worry if results aren't immediate. Wraith warned Sylvia firmly not to use her magic until he gave permission. His scan showed her magic flow stabilizing, confirming the potion's effectiveness. Smiling broadly, he assured them that her life was no longer at risk. He told them to rest and take it easy for the day. Lath felt overwhelming relief when Wraith spoke, but concern for Sylvia caused their legs to give out as the tension released. The others started celebrating after Wrath left the room. Satisfied for the day, he had used Lafay's place. He realized he needed space to organize his ingredients and potions. The Nweraith state was too restrictive. Limited space could keep him from treating some patients effectively. He wanted a large workspace so he would not disturb anyone. At Daisy's shop, he seemed distracted. She asked what he was thinking, and he said her shop felt peaceful. Just days ago, he risked his life gathering materials in the forest while being chased by a giant skeleton and blood wolves. Daisy wondered whether that skeleton was the monster that had attacked an adventure the Wraith had saved. Surprised, he heard Guildrovers say 2 people had seen a giant skeleton in a forest that was supposed to be free of monsters, which seemed odd. Daisy asked what happened to the skeleton, and Wraith said they defeated it, crediting him, the adventurer, with most of the effort. Daisy asked who it was, noting that the skeleton was at least a plus rank. Wrath confirmed he was with Lafay. Daisy recognized Lafay as the youngest S-ranked adventurer. Daisy was amazed Wrath knew someone so famous, since he'd been in the capital for less than 6 months. By the next day, Soviet was much better. Her magic circulation was healthy, and she fully recovered. Sylvia, overjoyed, hugged Wraith and thanked him profusely. Wraith said he was relieved everything had worked out. Wrath brought up the guild's discussions about the skeleton they fought. That morning, Sylvia said she'd received a request to kill a monster in the same forest near the capital they had visited. Wraith was surprised the request named her and said the client was the head of the Radium family, one of the 4 great noble families. Ruth knew that man. Sylvia said she had already defeated the skeleton, but was laughing so much. There may only be a blood wall left, and I plan to report the skeleton incident to the guild. Ruth decided to join her because she would need the magic gem to prove the defeat, and Sylvia wanted to come along. All 3 headed to the guild together. Wraith noticed how many different shops the city had, so the others promised to show him a weapon shop next time. They stopped at a jewelry store where Sylvia admired a necklace for Lafay. Wrath inspected the accessories, searching for a replacement for his broken ring. Wanting to help her heal, Sylvia asked him if he wanted anything. Sylvia's bright smile was impossible to resist, so Ruth showed her a ring. He considered another item, but she insisted on the ring. Sylvie said a necklace can symbolize safety, while a ring carries a more personal meaning that made her blush. After buying gifts, the group arrived at the guild where Amelia had gone. Was happy to see Sylvia in good health. They thanked Amelia for her care. Their close bond warmed Wrath. Amelia asked if Lappy had come for the monster request. Laffey confirmed this, noting that they had defeated it and were all gathering ingredients in the forest to heal Sylvia. Amelia admired their feat. Wrath produced a magic gem from the skeleton and showed it to her. That showed only an S-ranked adventurer could have defeated such a formidable monster. Knowing Lathe's strength, Amelia warned her not to overexert herself. After confirming the gem's authenticity, she intended only to report it to the Radium family, and the reward would be available in 3 days. Lappy insisted on giving the whole reward to Wrath despite Wrath's protests. Make clear her actions were for Sylvia, not for profit. Therefore, she allowed Wrath to have the reward for defeating the skeleton. Wraith relented, even though he was overwhelmed by the 200 gold coins. It was still suggested that he had opened a shop. Manage a shop without feeling overwhelmed. After talking it over with Daisy, Wrath decided to create a workshop instead. To an alchemist, a workshop was a treasured space for uninterrupted experiments. Wrath valued that space like other alchemists. In the forest, his experiments were confined to an underground workshop, but in the capital, daily life and money matters distracted him. With extra funds, he could now build one. He dropped by Daisy's shop to share his workshop plans, and she wondered about his sudden decision. Wrath said his new wealth made the dream possible, so he asked her for help since she was well connected and admitted he knew little about skilled craftspeople, turning to the resourceful Daisy for guidance. Daisy felt flattered and noticed that Wraith's master had built her own workshop, a rare accomplishment. Daisy offered to connect him with qualified people and said she was interested in joining the project. Wrath did not expect her to be involved because he had someone else in mind to help create the workshop. Daisy's mood darkened as she insisted her help was for his benefit. Wraith, wary of her reclusive ways, couldn't argue. Worried about leaving the shop unattended, Daisy urged him to go ahead, saying she was closing it that afternoon anyway. While they walked, Daisy asked who Wrath had in mind. Wrath named Sylvia Laffey's sister. Daisy, unfamiliar with her, questioned whether Wraith was foolish to consider help from an S-rank adventurer, and Wraith clarified it wasn't his idea. He asked about the workshop builder, and Daisy called them a total eccentric. Wrath was unfazed by eccentric behavior because he knew Daisy. Someone arrived with her at an ordinary house. They knocked and a cheerful woman opened the door. She hugged Daisy excitedly, even though Daisy wanted to be released. Wrath was surprised by her odd behavior. Daisy firmly told her to stop. Tearfully declaring her deep love for Daisy, the woman was met with a cold rejection. She noticed Wrath and he introduced himself. Nicola was her name, and she seemed to know of him. Wrath said he wanted to build a workshop and that Daisy had recommended her for the job. Nicola was pleased that Daisy supported Wraith's request to create a workshop and asked, while pulling out some paper, if it would be his first. Wrath said he'd run one before and knew what was required, but this time he wanted to set it up in the 2-story building where he lived. Already having a prototype for the workshop, he wanted to design it based on that. With a budget of 200 gold coins, he could stretch slightly if needed. Nicola pointed out that the budget opened up many possibilities and asked how Wraith planned to use the workshop. Wraith said it would be used mainly to make potions and magical devices. He showed her a magic gem and asked whether it might be useful for the workshop. Impressed, Nicola asked Wraith to show the site he had in mind for the workshop and said they would discuss costs after her visit. While she gathered a few items, Wrath asked Daisy how she knew Nicola, and Daisy said they met when she was an adventurer and had stayed in touch ever since. Wrath was surprised to discover that Daisy had been an adventurer. After Nicola returned, they walked to the spacious site of the Wraith's Plan Living workshop. Nicola inspected the area inside and decided to prepare a quote that also covered the magic gem. Nicola asked if Wraith wanted to use it to store magical energy. Wraith was taken aback because magic gems were usually used as components in magical devices, not to store energy, as Nicola suggested. Since Wrath already had many magical devices in his workshop, keeping them powered all the time must be draining, and storing magical energy in a gem would let him use his tools instantly, she explained. Magical devices need a lot of energy, and a stored reserve would make it easier to use those that draw power continuously. Wrath agreed. Nicola said they would start setting up the workshop in about a week. Without warning, she changed her tone and asked Wrath about his relationship with Daisy. A chill ran through Ray, and he wanted to get away from the sudden tension. Nicola grabbed his neck before he could speak. Daisy said they were close, leaving out that it was a teacher-student relationship and mentioning that Wrath had been teaching her various things. Wrath, shaking, thought her explanation sounded odd. Pale, Nicola confronted Wrath and warned him of the consequences if he ever harmed Daisy. Wraith vowed he'd never do such a thing, and Nicole immediately felt moved and lighter, smiling as if nothing had happened. Hugging and kissing Daisy, she said she was heading home while Daisy tried to fend off her affectionate gestures. After Nicole left, Wraith hesitated, not sure where to look. He asked Daisy if she really wanted to come back next week, but she stayed firm. She said she couldn't change Nicola's overly affectionate nature and thanked Ruth for the day. Next, Wrath and Lathe walked together as Lathe asked what Wrath was shopping for. He said he'd buy anything appealing, like items for his workshop's interior, then laughed and asked about its progress. Wraith said it would come together, then pulled out a flower clip, and they placed it on Laffey, who blushed and insisted she couldn't pull off something so feminine. Seeing Wrath and Lathe, the shop owner asked if they were out shopping that day and offered them a discount. They quickly clarified they were not dating. Rafe started buying what he wanted while Lathe waited, and they picked up ingredients for dinner, and he asked if Soltia or Lathe liked anything. Lathe said she had no particular preferences, while Sylvia liked sweet foods. When Wraith remarked that girls Sylvia's age often like sweets, Lacking noted how old he sounded. Wraith remembered Daisy saying something similar, which made him briefly sad, and they went to Wraith's kitchen to make dessert. In the kitchen, they started preparing dragon meat. Wraith tried to help, but had trouble cutting the tough meat. Laffy suggested he chop the vegetables, while she handled the meat, because dragon meat was very hard to cut. They managed to prepare a tasty meal, despite the challenges. The soldier was excited by how the food looked, and was already a fan of cooking with dairy. Eager to try Wraith's dessert, they ate dinner while chatting casually afterward. Laffey and Wrath washed the dishes in the kitchen. One day, Laffey asked about Wrath's workshop. She described it as a place of magical devices and ingredient storage, and pictured odd items inside because it was his workshop. After cleaning, thank them for the meal and go home. A week later, bring them home. Rathmit met Nicolai and Daisy and said he had brought someone else to help Sylvia. Sylvia introduced herself shyly. She almost overwhelmed Nicola with her cuteness. Nicola wanted to hug her, but held back because it was their first meeting. Daisy felt a little jealous when she compared herself to Sylvia. Sylvie said Wrath had asked her to help, but she wasn't sure what her role was. Nicola chuckled and said Sylvia didn't need to work hard because Nicola and Daisy would cover for her. Daisy approached Sylvia and said she hoped they would work well together. Sylvia felt overwhelmed by Daisy's charm. Sylvia asked Wrath quietly about Daisy and remarked that she was cute. After Ray revealed Daisy's name and that she was older than Sylvia, Sylvia panicked and switched to formal speech. With everyone gathered, Wrath asked Nicolette if the preparations were ready, and she lifted her magic bag to confirm she had everything. This bag used spatial magic to hold far more than its exterior suggested, and it was a rare, valuable item that required advanced magic to make and was not commonly sold. Nicola said a mage friend helped her get through the collaboration. Taken aback by the idea of making something with someone, Wraith had no idea what to do. Having never done it before, he thought of a mage who could help, hoping they could make something impressive together. Work was starting, but Sylvia seemed distracted around Nicola. Inside the workshop, Nicola pulled furniture from her magic bag and arranged it with spatial magic. Wraith watched, impressed. Sylvia asked if he was really impressed, pointing out that magic like that was common among mages. Spatial magic, she added, was challenging and at least as complex as her own. Feeling inspired, Wraith asked Sylvia if she wanted to make a magic bag with him. Sylvia smiled and agreed, showing her excitement about the idea. Wraith was thrilled at the idea of having his own magic bag. They started making potions, while Nicholas set up a magical device to store the ingredients. Similar ingredients require specific temperatures and humidity levels for storage, a critical step in preparing for any workshop. The team divided the tasks and started working together. Having finished his first task, Wraith began his second and saw Daisy and Sylvia talking. Sylvia kept talking while Daisy told her to focus and urged them to channel their magical energy into the skeleton's magic gem. Nicola worked alone to prepare the magical device, while Sylvia at the mage was busy charging the magic gem. Bored and a bit useless, Nicola started planning the workshop setup for the next day. Getting ready to make magical devices, Nicola asked for ideas. They spoke up, eager to share an idea. A magic circle he had designed caught Nicola's interest when he revealed it. Though Daisy and Sylvia were puzzled again. Sylvia had never seen a circle like that before. Wraith explained it wasn't for casting spells, but had a different purpose. Daisy sounded impatient and asked what it was for. The speaker explained that the circle was made to create magical devices through an alchemical pen process, and by infusing it with a desired magical effect, he could transform accessories into magical devices. His plan was to power the circle with the magic gem's energy, which would also speed up creating these circles. Magic circles are usually single-use and lose their power after creating a magical device, so a new circle must be drawn for each device. One theory said a constant energy supply from a magic gem could make the circle permanent and reusable, though it would require a large amount of power. Luckily, they had a skeleton's magic gem infused with an S-ranked mage's power. Nicola found Wrath's idea promising, but needed time to study the unfamiliar circle. Still confused, Daisy and Sylvia watched Wrath and Nicola wrap up their discussion. Wrath apologized for leaving them out and asked Sylvia if she wanted to make the magic bag they'd talked about earlier. He wanted her to enchant a bag with special magic using Nicholas's instructions, but he worried it might fail. Rafe gathered everything he needed: veto fluid, a bag, and a brush. He used fluid already charged with his magic to draw a unique magic circle on the bag's surface, and because it was his first attempt, the process was difficult. Daisy and Sylvia waited patiently. Next, Sylvia stepped forward and cast a spell to expand the circle's space. She told everyone to step back and began the ritual. When they were done, they weren't sure it had worked. Wraith tested the bag. The interior was remarkably spacious. All signs suggested success, but Wraith sensed something was wrong. Liquid suddenly spilled out of the bag, creating an expanding spherical vortex. Daisy clutched Wraith's foot as the sphere began pulling them inward. Sylvia cast a spell to stop the absorption and prevent injuries. The expanding sphere severely damaged the house's walls and nearby objects. After resting to catch their breath, they agreed that reaching out to Niccolo was the best option. Sylvia's magic worked properly, but the problem was the magic circle Nicola had drawn. On his first attempt, he probably made mistakes in the markings meant to keep the bag's expansion contained. Instead, the faulty ring gave way, and the expansion burst outward. It chose to assess the damage first. The room at the heart of the workshop was the largest and closest to the entrance. It held the magic gem and most of the magical devices. Other rooms probably took damage too, and Wrath felt terrible for causing the mess. Nicola arrived and explained that their original plan was no longer feasible, and he accepted the situation, vowing to use all of them. All his savings went into creating the finest workshop possible. They repaired the damage a few days later. The workshop's exterior looked impressive. He stepped inside to see if Nicola had finished his request. On entering, he noticed permanent magic circles made of mithril that drew energy from the magic gem to boost the efficiency of magical device production. Not finished yet, Nicole said the circles still needed their final markings, and she had prepared 5 small ones to avoid cluttering the space. Mithril's unmatched magical conductivity made it ideal, but its rarity and how hard it was to work with after the challenges limited its use. Daisy had said Nicola's skill was remarkable. Charging directly into mithril was difficult, so she gave him a specialized mithril tool and said she would connect the circuits to the magic gem after he finished. Wraith was anxious and determined not to repeat his earlier mistake. Despite his experience with magic circles, he drew each one with meticulous care. When Nicola needed to connect them, pacing with the gem, she puzzled Wrath. Wrath asked what she was doing, curious. She said she was using magic to build the circuit. He asked to watch, and she agreed. He then asked if she had been an adventurer like Daisy. Her teasing suggested Daisy had mentioned a love story, but he clarified it wasn't true. Nicola recalled once pursuing Daisy, who had refused to join any adventuring party. Nicola was instantly smitten. When Wrath asked why she quit adventuring, she explained. Crafting became her main focus after she was deeply inspired by one person. This person served as a guide on her crafting journey. Beautiful on the outside and intelligent and determined inside, she was someone Nicola wanted to emulate. When Wraith asked her name, she said she was Lucia, a renowned hero of the kingdom and Wraith's mentor. Wrath, a disciple of Lucia, warned Nicola not to idolize her, and Nicola was surprised. Having heard that Lucia had a charming apprentice, she asked him if he knew where Lucia was, but he didn't. Nicola vowed to find a way to meet Lucia again despite his words. Seeing that resolve, Wrath did not press further. Their work is complete. Nicola confirmed the magical devices were working, and Wraith tested them successfully. He was encouraged to contact her if he felt unhappy or needed more help. Daisy and Sylvia arrived, drawn by the commotion. Wraith eagerly told them the magic circles were working. That meant his workshop was finally finished. Later that day, Luffy heard the news and asked how the workshop had gone. Wraith said it was fantastic. Amelia cut him off because she had been waiting to meet him, handed him something he assumed was a letter, and then said it was not. The royal family issued a direct order. Lucia appears in the next chapter, fighting a massive monster while calmly sipping a drink. She hurried after hearing that Wrath was in the capital. At 7, Wrath was with Lucia and asked how she had become so impressive. She asked him what the most important part of alchemy was. He replied that it was knowledge. Lucia said something was far more important than knowledge. Hands-on experience. She put him in front of a monster and told him to take a fruit from near its nest. It seemed easy to a 7-year-old, even as he screamed in terror. Wraith woke from a dream and fell out of his chair. His combined living and working space became where he spent most of his time, and he often fell asleep during all-night work. Life now was much easier than when he lived under his mentor's guidance. Still, he felt a bit uneasy about the letter from the royal family. The letter summoned him to the royal castle in 3 days. Wraith intended to comply, but he was uneasy because they did not say what they needed from him. Remembering his mentor in a dream disturbed him, because it was the first time he'd thought of her since arriving in the capital. A brief worry that his mentor might visit crossed his mind, but he dismissed it as overthinking and stuck to his morning routine before going shopping. Each morning he tended his workshop, using alchemy to speed plant growth. He felt better remembering how tiny the plants used to be. After organizing his tools, he went shopping. Ray found the letter from Looms in his mailbox, which left him stunned. A second check confirmed he wasn't dreaming, and the sound was coming from the Looms. Rushing to Lafayette and Sylvia, he called an emergency meeting about a grave situation. Lathe asked if it was a request from the royal family, but Wrath said it was far worse. At first the girls were excited, until Wraith announced his mentor was coming. They simply laughed. Lafay is unsure whether they should plan a party. Wraith Pinnock said he had to flee at once. Knowing she had his address, he was terrified that his peaceful life was in danger. Lafay told him to take it easy. Wraith noted his mentor was clearly unusual, but questioned whether he needed to go to such extremes to avoid her, and he insisted a reunion would be heartwarming only if mentor and disciple had a good relationship, but his mentor was awful and lacked common sense. Lafay said his mentor wanted to see him, so he could meet her. Wraith replied that living with her meant cooking every meal, cleaning everything, doing all the laundry and constantly facing life-threatening situations, and he refused to go back to that nightmare. Lucia suddenly entered the room and greeted Wraith. Her presence was so strong that even 2 high-ranking mages noticed. Tension rose as a flustered Wraith said he had urgent business. Lucia grabbed his shoulder, sat beside him, and said it had been a long time since they'd last met. Noticing Lafay and Sylvia, Lucia teased Wrath, saying he was the sort who charmed cute girls. Asked whether they were his girlfriends, Wrath said they were just friends. He scolded her for being rude to strangers and joked that her attitude was why she was still single. Lucia paused, grinned, said there was something on his face, then flicked his nose. One flick sent Wrath flying like a feather. Lucia's strength left the girl stunned. Lathe asked who the woman was. Lucia's expression changed when she introduced herself as Wraith's mentor, the legendary Mimi. Lathe and Sylvia returned the introductions. Wraith asked why Lucia was in the capital, and Lucia explained how people could ask for her help. She pulled the royal family's letter from her clothing. Wrath was surprised to find she had human connections. Lucia admitted having ties to the royal family, but said she disliked their fallen hero nicknamed after her while praising Rui. Sylvia, realizing something, asked if she was the Lucia James who repelled a dragon horde attacking the capital and helped rebuild it. Minnie was impressed that a young girl recognized her, since she was known as the greatest mage. Wraith asked Laffy if that was true, and Laffy confirmed it. Lucia's demand for compensation, asking for free drinks at every establishment, was exorbitant, and Wraith, knowing Lucia cared little for money, suspected they had the wrong person. Lathe said Lucia demanded free drinks across the capital, emptied every bar for 3 days and nights, and delayed the reconstruction celebrations. Wraith knew it was her. Sylvia said how he had saved her life, and Lucia smirked at him. Wrath said he had received a similar royal request and asked whether Lucia would accept it. Lucia replied it depended on the task, since the letter only vaguely told her to come. It made Wraith suspicious about why they hid details from his mentor. Lucia offered to teach Sylvia magic during their stay, and she was delighted. Wrath almost warned Sylvia not to get too attached, but her excitement made him hold back. Sylvia's S-ranked venture status meant she could handle even a dragon's nest, he noted. Lucia planned to start training tomorrow, and Wrath excused himself. Laffey and Sylvia had their own task to handle. Wrath asked Lucia what she'd do next, and with no plans, she decided to follow him. They headed to his workshop, which pleased her. Annoyed by Wraith's tardiness, Daisy asked who Lucia was. Lucia introduced herself. When Daisy asked if she was the fallen hero, Lucia confirmed it. Her intense stare made Lucia nervous. Wrath asked Daisy whether she had time. She said she had received a rare ingredient that would take longer to process. Daisy asked about Lucia's purpose. Lucia offered to help to make up for delaying Daisy's discipline, and Daisy agreed, introducing them to a rare southern plant used for cooking and medicine. Lucia wanted to know how it would be used in Daisy's medicine kit. Once Lucia confirmed they had enough materials, she began the process. She explained the current material had heat-retaining and antibacterial qualities, but a small error in its preparation could cause a noticeable odor that would make it unsellable. Skilled at managing it with magic, Lucia felt confident. Both Daisy and Wraith looked impressed. Lucia asked for magic bottles, saying they were ideal for storage, but Wraith was still making them. Lucia chose to use her own bottles, and with a snap of her fingers, several bottles appeared in the room, leaving Daisy visibly astonished. She had hoped for some praise, but Daisy wasn't the sort to offer it. Wrath noted that their mentor's approach combined alchemy and magic. It differed from his own methods. For the first time, Daisy saw someone use spatial and control magic at the same time, and mentally grouped Wraith and Lucia. Wraith insisted he hadn't been drinking and had handled his responsibilities. He was more practical than Lucia. Lucia admitted he could make elixirs with ease, but Ray insisted she made elixirs to pay her bar tabs. Watching them argue, Daisy looked at the bottles and realized both were underestimating their value. The next chapter begins with Ruth asking why Lucia was following him. It was treated as perfectly normal. She explained that visiting a disciple's workshop was a mentor's responsibility. Ruth relented and let her stay because she had finished the day's tasks. Lucia seemed bent on pestering him. He asked her not to wander off too much. Despite her reluctance, she agreed, and when she asked about his plans to open a shop, he admitted he was considering it but hadn't decided. On entering, Lucia ignored his instructions and wandered around, picking up objects, swinging in a hammock, and asking about anything that caught her attention. Wrath wondered whether she planned to remain in the kingdom, and she confirmed it, leaving him to realize he'd be cooking, doing her laundry, and cleaning up her messes again. When his mood soured, Lucia assumed he was thrilled to be living with his mentor again. When she asked for alcohol, Wraith reminded her how old he was. When he asked where she'd been, she said nothing. She said she was gathering ingredients and visiting friends. The translocation magic was powerful, but drained too much energy for frequent use. Lucia, curious about his presence in the capital, listened as Wrath said monsters had shown up near his old home and he had run out of money, so he started selling potions. Life had been hard since he left that house, and now he was under pressure from his mentor and royal requests. Wraith decided to cook, but Lucia refused to help and said she couldn't, leaving him stunned that someone so skilled in alchemy and magic did not know basic cooking. Lucia's one attempt at cooking left Wrath with a stomachache, confirming her culinary incompetence. As Wrath cooked, Lucia explored the other rooms, thinking about how much he'd grown. Entering the freezing room, she quickly stepped back. Thinking Sylvia might have enchanted it because Wraith couldn't use magic, she moved on to the final room. Dark and damp, the last room looked empty at first. Convinced there was a thief, Lucia got ready to confront them. Wraith rushed to her when he heard her scream, finding her in tears as time went on. Bugs crawled everywhere, and he said they were valuable. They made unique threads that could withstand magical enhancements, and Wraith suggested using items like shoes and bags to lift Lucia's spirits. After dinner, he asked her to help with the project. During the meal, he mentioned the task and reminded her not to speak with her mouth full. It was explained that it would require crafting a magical device. Lucia was shocked that Wrath couldn't create it himself. He explained it needed magic he couldn't manage alone, and she confidently urged him to trust his mentor. Wrath liked her enthusiasm, but pointed out she didn't need to use her full power, because it could destroy the capital overnight. When she asked about the project, he said they were making a bag that expands to hold many items. Lucia applied the spatial magic. Wraith also hoped she would help if anything went wrong. He valued her mentorship as worth 100 helpers and used a new method to make the bag. The materials included threads from a bug that had surprised Lucia earlier. They were stronger than mithril, highly conductive to magic, and nearly unbreakable by hand, able to support a grown man's weight. He showed her the bag where he had woven a magic circle into the threads. After checking the bag and finding no bugs, Lucia began the process. After she finished, Wraith asked if that had worked. Lorien stayed confident and tested it by putting an item inside. With the bag's success confirmed, Lucia expected a cheeky remark from him. But he's just thinking about her. It moved her to tears. She was prompted to ask him to join her for drinks. Wraith said he was underage, but when she suggested he have some juice, he ran out of excuses. Later, Sylvie went to her first magic class with Lucia and Wraith. When asked about teaching requests, Lucia considered teaching Sylvia spatial magic. Lucia offered to teach Sylvia magic, and Wraith joined them out of concern, though Sylvia seemed excited. Luffy hesitated and asked Wrath if he was worried, assuring him that Sylvia was not fragile, and she pointed out how rare it was to get personal lessons from Lucia, the hero who saved the city from giant dragons, and said she regretted not being able to teach Sylvia herself as a swordsman. Wraith asked whether things would get worse now that Sylvia was hurt, and Lathe agreed they would. Lucia recommended starting with translocation magic, a highly advanced form of spatial magic. She told Sylvia it wasn't that difficult and pointed to Sylvia's talent, but Sylvia still seemed hesitant. Laffy said Lucia chose translocation on a whim, and Wrath agreed, noted Luria's impulsive nature, but when Ratha added Lucia could be reliable at times, Laffy took that to mean she could also be unreliable. Lucia demonstrated translocation by disappearing and reappearing in another place. Sylvia clapped, but it was unrealistic to expect her to try right away. Celeria let Sylvia sense the magic first, holding her hands as she channeled it, and Sylvia felt it. Lucia urged her to try, but Sylvia hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Snap your Luria's fingers and sow the advantage. Everyone was left stunned and worried. Sylvia appeared again in the sky. She fell onto Wraith, who caught her safely. They knew Lucia was responsible. Wraith scolded her and joked he'd put a bug on her pillow that night to make her regret it. Lucia asked Sylvia whether she felt any magic during the experience. Sylvia confirmed she had and chose to practice there to keep that sensation. She explained that staying aware of the link between her target coordinates was crucial while casting her magic. They began by moving small items, like one of Wraith's potions. She handed the potion to Sylvia, who tried to shift its location, succeeded in moving it but accidentally fired. It shattered, but Lucia noted that despite the minor damage, the translocation worked, and she said a typical person couldn't have done it, and that Sylvia just needed to concentrate on the connection. Lose focus and it's easy to hurt whatever you move. Sylvia wondered what would happen if she tried to move a person. Lucia casually replied that they could split up. Only one attempt succeeded in that day's magic lesson. Lathe asked when they had met. Lucia said she met Wrath 7 years ago. Many events followed, and Wrath became her disciple at age 10. Sylvia said their meeting was incredible, like a clash of brilliant minds. Lauren said she already knew Wraith's parents and never imagined they would have a child so perfect for alchemy. Sylvia looked confused, so Wrath explained that his parents had been adventurers as powerful as Lucia, but he had not inherited any of their fighting skills. He lacked their fighting talent, but a rare gift for alchemy led Lucia to mentor him. He admitted he might not have become her disciple if he had known her true nature back then. Sylvia said she was thrilled to meet Lucia. Luria's friends came over and whispered something that made the girls grin at Wrath. When he asked what she had said, she admitted telling them that. Though he spoke harshly, he had a soft side. Every year Wraith sent her a birthday gift, she said, which showed his kindness. That evening Wrath came home and found chaos. Lucia clutched a bottle of alcohol. Wraith tried to figure out what happened earlier. Lucia begged for permission to drink just one bottle. She called it harmless and Ray brushed it off, but she reminded him she had helped with his magic bag. Reluctantly, he agreed to only one bottle at dinner. He felt uneasy, even though Lucia was used to drinking. He apologized to Sylvia and moved forward and started cooking dinner. Later, a loud noise cut through the silence, and he went to check on Lucia in the room where she drank. Now Wraith asked what had happened, and Lafferty explained that Lucia had suddenly used her magic. The bottle looked untouched, but Wraith suspected she had used translocation magic to drink directly from it while he was drunk. Wraith refilled it with water magic, then told her to sit down and promised not to scold her for drinking. She said she wasn't drunk. Lathe asked what to do, but before Wrath could answer, a wind started tossing everything in the room. Lucia cast magic even while intoxicated, and though magic normally required intense focus, she could wield it instinctively, relying on skills built into her body. Her magic threatened the house, so Sylvia canceled it and prevented its destruction. This caused her to collapse. Wrath gave her a potion to help her recover. He decided she must never drink again. Luffy asked Wrath to look after her while they cleaned up. Ray thanked Laffy and started pulling Lure Sims. Wrath had a plan and let Sins rest while he and Renee worked on something, but the fruit was very soggy and he had planned to test it first before time ran out. Because Lorraine had caused problems for Lathe and Sylvia, Wrath hoped this would count as an apology. After some alchemy, the liquid started to rumble. The mixture looked like it worked, and Wrath was pleased. At the end, he added a soddy, his first time making something other than a potion, and it went well. When he came back to the room, he found it much cleaner, presented his creation, and explained it was a gesture of gratitude. Instead of answering, he showed them. A rift opened in the lights, and the bottle glowed. The girls seemed to enjoy it. Liquefied fruit runoff shines in various colors depending on the light. Sagi, a plant that draws magical energy from the soil, emits light and darkness. When combined through alchemy, they produce a stunning glow prized by a kingdom. They thanked Wrath but left because the Linford family had a direct request and business waiting for them the next day. A prominent noble family descended from a renowned herbalist who fought in a war over a century ago, known for exceptional magical talent and battlefield feats. Their achievements made the Linfords one of the kingdom's 4 great noble families, and they regularly produced skilled herbalists and mages who safeguarded the land while their eldest son, Seth Linford, was being scolded. His sister Elisha scolded him for sighing because she thought it chased away happiness. Her urging did not lift Seth, and he stayed downcast. Elisha urged Seth to smile. Someone said he looked better that way and asked if he was thinking of Ada. Seth kept thinking about him and felt sad about the lack of news. That made her wonder whether it was connected to their father's earlier talk about the royal family. Seth's silence confirmed her guess. Alicia told him she wanted him to lead the family, but not if it cost his happiness. Seth said he was not opposed to taking the role, but if he stepped back, the responsibility would fall to Aura or his younger brother. He surpassed Seth in both herbalist and wizard skills and believes he has a better chance to lead the family, resenting Seth. Taking over the family requires inheriting the territory, so one must stand out in both skills and character. Despite his remarkable abilities, his flawed personality makes him far from the ideal choice to lead the family. Alicia told Seth their father was considering him as the successor, so things should go smoothly if everything falls into place. Seth said the established line of succession might be changed depending on how this situation with the royal family turns out. A direct command from the royal family arrived, and although Alicia didn't know the letter's details, she knew 2 people had been chosen to carry out the order. Seth said he'd do his best, but he admitted Otto was more skilled than he was. He said that if he were more capable than Otto, they would not be facing this problem now. Seth cut her off when Alicia tried to explain and told her it would be okay. He would figure something out, and Alicia hoped nothing bad would happen. Before going to see their father, Seth teased her lightly. Guilt weighed on him for causing Alicia so much worry. When he entered the hall, It spoke to him in a mocking tone. Adam suggested they meet their father together, and Seth couldn't refuse because he didn't know how Adam might react if he refused, so they began walking. While they walked, Ada said this was a great chance to prove to their father who was best suited to take over the family, but Seth wanted to focus on his own preparations. Meanwhile, at Rate's house, Lucia woke up after falling from her sleeping spot. Wrath saw her as a bug, rubbing against him. She asked him to take care of her. Raid stared at her sternly despite what she said, and told her to save her complaints for later and get ready. They were on their way to the royal castle that day. The day a direct request from the royal family arrived, Ray felt he must not make a bad impression. Lucia appeared at ease, but Wrath gave her a chilling smile, reminding her they reconnected because of her. Before getting ready, Lucia thought about how nagging the Wraith had been and missed his kinder, younger self. A snap of her fingers and she was ready to go. She wanted breakfast, but Wrath said there wasn't time. If she wanted to blame someone, she should blame herself. As they walked, Lucia complained that they were hungry. Ignoring her, Ray asked how well she knew the royal family. Lucia said she had defeated giant dragons for them, which earned her some influence. Wrath found that useful, but said they did not want her to cut ties because they wanted to keep using her. She had left the kingdom because staying to do their tasks would have been a hassle. Wrath had not realized what she had been through. Lucia chuckled and warned Wrath to be careful as her disciple. She said the kingdom likely viewed her as a free spirit who was hard to pin down for requests. Knowing this, they would probably focus next on dispelling her. In other words, from now on, Ruth may start receiving many requests in her place. Wrath refused to be her errand runner. They reached a spot where the castle came into view. Excited by the chance of finding food there, Lucia started running. Wraith tried to stop her, but it was no use, and like a child she might not get any food, which would upset her. Reaching the gate, Wrath was struck by its size. Soldiers stopped them after they showed the royal family's letter. The soldiers immediately apologized and led them inside. While they walked, Lucia said the dragons were as large as the castle. Ruth was stunned, then someone bumped into him. Otter insulted them by calling them commoners. Lucia grew angry and demanded to know why they had a problem with him, since they did not know him. Wrath wondered whether Otto had also been summoned to the castle. Otto insisted it wasn't his fault and said he had already apologized. Even so, he deliberately pushed Wrath. The maids came in and apologized for the delay. Wraith felt uneasy about the situation. When they entered the room, Seth and Otto were already there. Wraith found it odd that they were placed in the same waiting area as the nobles, including the man from earlier. Lucia ignored the others and focused on her hunger. Seth Rose smiled and offered them snacks. They thanked him, gave their names, and asked why they were there. Wrath said he was Mimi's disciple and had come to fulfill a request. Seth pointed out that Wrath was like them, since he and his brother Otto were following orders from the royal family. Another person laughed and said nobles like Seth should not mix with commoners because it could tarnish their status. Seth replied sharply that it was none of his concern, but he seemed unmoved by the remark. Noticing their tension, Wraith just wanted to go home. Preparations complete, they were ready to proceed. Seth apologized and expressed regret for his brother's actions, saying that should suddenly appear to among them. They entered, and the royal family's father told them to relax. Lucia greeted Wilbur warmly and teased him about getting older. Wilbur paused briefly, then admitted that age was catching up. Lucia asked why they were summoned and said he doubted it was for casual talk. Wilbur said the Linfords present already knew the reason, but he explained it to Lucia, James, and her disciple, who were unaware. His only task was to retrieve the crystal dragon, the nation's emblem. Worshipped for over 300 years, this rare dragon produced crystals. He urged them to save it, and they did. The usually flawless crystals were now darkening and breaking down. The dragon's body was slowly shrinking. Lucia said the goal was to heal it. Ruber hesitated, then stepped forward to assure the king he had healed it. Irritated by his confidence, Lucia insisted her disciple could certainly succeed as well. The king was surprised by how young Wrath was. Lucia insisted Wrath was more skilled than the other young man. Wrath told her not to expect too much and promised the king he would do his best. Ready to focus, Lucia asked if this had happened before. The king said it had not. Lucia asked about the dragon's diet and habits and said it ate metal and often wandered the yard or castle with his daughter. Wrath wanted to inspect it closely. Seeming restless, the dragon stayed still. Wraith examined it closely and noted its reactions. The king asked if he had found anything. Wrath said the dark discoloration came from tiny metal particles in the crystals, even though the dragon normally digests metals completely. Wraith theorized the dragon was either failing to digest metals or that something was happening after digestion. Its insides were clogged with undigested metals blocking the vessels. Normally dissolved metals reached the body's surface, but blockages now prevented proper flow, so he concluded the fluid flow in the dragon's vessels had stopped, causing a dangerous buildup. He asked if the crystal dragon had been eating metals as it normally did, and the king said it had not, which may mean the dragon's instincts are sensing a threat to its life, and that more fluid buildup could burst its vessels. To a human, the pain felt like blood vessels bursting, and Ray felt deep sympathy for the dragon and vowed to find a cure. The king asked if he had any solutions, and Wrath suggested trying an idea he'd just thought of. With the king's permission, Wraith approached the dragon. At first, the dragon pulled away from his touch. Wrath soothed it by promising to help. He tried to use transformation magic on the dragon. Alchemy, not magic, uses the practitioner's own materials and relies on influence, which might let them extract the metals from the dragon's crystal. Still, this ability was limited. Rate's influence, though stronger than Luria's, did not affect the dragon. Ray realized it wouldn't be easy. Luria encouraged him to try a different approach. Apologizing to the king, Wrath said this was all he could do for now and promised to return later with a solution. Someone warned Wrath not to act impulsively before he took command of the castle. Seth showed up to discuss a deal with him for the next chapter. Hungry, Lorien led Seth and Wraith to a nearby eatery. After the meal, Seth asked Wrath to help. Wrath, confused, asked if Seth meant claiming credit for the task. Seth said he was fine with Wrath completing the request, but he wanted to stop his brother from doing that. Rafe did not care who finished it as long as it was done. Because the request involved the country's symbol, Seth noted that if it came from the royal family. To his family, it didn't matter who fulfilled it, but for him, it was personal. It turned out he was the eldest son of a prominent noble family and was expected to inherit its leadership. Luria knew the family of renowned herbalists, and they disliked her because her alchemy skills outshone theirs from the moment she arrived. The request could shift the family succession to Seth's younger brother, something Seth was desperate to prevent. He pursued collaboration on rates to prevent this. Ray reviewed the proposal and agreed. Unlike Oda, Seth saw it as a chance to raise more funds for his shop and remained kind and modest. Faith wanted to know why Seth was so determined to lead the family. Seth said his younger sister backed up his claim. Seth didn't trust his brother with the responsibility, and people nearby teased him for his kind motive, which embarrassed him, but Wraith called it a noble reason. Wrath noticed Seth was unusually approachable for a noble, and though Seth tried not to seem aloof, he wondered if he should be more reserved. Wrath admitted he had little experience with people from great families, but he valued kindness and wanted to be friendly no matter their rank. Although his noble status and personal feelings held him back, Seth appreciated meeting Wraith, who treated him as an equal. They shook hands with Seth eager to work together. As they reviewed the plans, Wrath asked Seth what he knew about the crystal dragon. Seth admitted that even nobles rarely saw the dragon, so he knew no more than Wraith. Rafe had no solid plan right now. Luria suggested experiments, but that wasn't possible because they were handling the nation's symbol. The main challenge was identifying the metals. The crystal dragon that could not dissolve, or those that reverted to their original form after dissolving. He asked Seth if there was anywhere in the kingdom that processed liquid metals. They wanted to find a liquid metal that changed state easily. This could meet the requirements he mentioned earlier, and to learn more they needed to visit the place that managed the kingdom's circulating liquid metals. He checked the rooms, but she only knew where to get a drink in the city. Ray thought about who could handle liquid metals and then had an idea. Luria asked whether he had someone in mind. Wraith warned it would be risky if someone less capable got involved. Luria grew irritated when he started brainstorming. Urging them to act immediately, she watched them set off for an unknown destination. Nimi led them to a girl who was excited to see her. Luria could hardly believe her eyes when she learned the woman's name was Nicola, but she didn't recognize her at first. After a moment, she remembered that Nicola had taken care of her when she was drunk years ago. Embarrassed, Wraith prepared to leave. He said they were there because their task was to investigate liquid metals. Nicola felt something off and inevitable. It was suspicious that a noble and an alchemist were working on the same task. She said she knew several relevant places and asked if they were looking for anything specific. He asked whether any metals can change easily between solid and liquid. Touching the dragon's crystals, he felt a warm pulse like blood flowing inside. If the surface was that warm, the interior was probably hotter, he thought. Nicola mentioned a new liquid metal that had been imported from the south. Wrath guessed it was called silver and was right, but she said only a little had been imported and none remained. Seth said the information was still helpful because he could tell his family how to source it. Rafe doubted it would work, saying that getting silver mostly came down to luck. Silver was found only in volcanic regions, alongside another nearly identical metal that could not be told apart under normal conditions because the silver-white metal was liquid, and it could be identified by its liquid form when the volcano was dormant. Volcanoes with silver were home to spirits. Spirits lived in natural phenomena, appeared only to those with strong magical abilities, and could affect volcanic activity. Wrath reassured Nicola that she had been very helpful and asked her to help search for any silver left in the kingdom. He offered to give her Lorraine's in return, and Nicola eagerly agreed to help. Wreath told Seth to try getting some through his family or check if the royal family had any left. After 5 days, they still had no success. Wrath asked again whether they had found anything, but their efforts failed and the royal family had nothing left, and Nicola also failed to find anything. Wraith chose to go straight to the source. Telling it apart from the similar metal would be difficult, even with his analysis. He asked whether Laramie could cool the silver with magic. She said it could work in an area without spirits, but she was cautious about meddling with their power. However, she said she could manage if the spirits let her use magic. Wraith was amazed she could talk to them. The spirits of major natural forces, she explained, were sometimes intelligent, and she hoped friendly or they risked being incinerated. Their best option seemed to be negotiating with the spirits. Wrath asked if she could defeat their enemies if they turned hostile, but the answer was discouraging. It became clear he had to act. He warned that if his mentor couldn't beat them, they'd have to build a magic device to win. He wanted one that specifically boosted magical energy and planned to make a ring to increase magical strength, but Lucia admitted she did not know any magic circle for that purpose. Ray revealed it was a new idea he had developed while she was away, confident she could build it easily. Lucia protested, saying a magic circle that complex was beyond her abilities and only Wrath could handle it. Next, Wraith got ready to start the process. Since he couldn't use magic, he relied on Seth and Lucia to run the tests. He revealed the scarlet crystal, which was not an alchemical material suitable for enhancing magic. When Seth started drawing the circle, he felt uneasy about the task. When Wrath finished, he asked who wanted to try it first, and Seth hesitated. Lucia volunteered. Seth asked if it was safe, and Wraith assured him it only gave off light and could not hurt anyone. Touching the circle, Miriam's eyes watered from the bright light. In the next chapter, Sylvia and Laughing saw a flash from their house and ran inside. A light magic test of the Wraith's magical enhancement device caused severe eye damage to the three from light as bright as a second sun. Lathy said they were lucky to have been nearby. Sylvia made dinner and asked if they could move. When food was mentioned, Lucia struggled to stand. Seth reminded Wrath about his earlier safety concerns. Wrath apologized, but it made no difference. Researchers have directly demonstrated the power of the magic circles. Seth retorted that he'd rather not have gone through it himself. Wraith's abilities were extraordinary, beyond what any ordinary alchemist could do. Seeing Lathe and Sylvia look curious, he introduced himself. Noticing Lathe's expression, Wrath said he met Seth while working on a request for the royal family, and their injury came from an experiment tied to it. Silly noted Wraith's knack for getting into trouble. Then Wraith asked Lafty and Sylvia for a favor. I was hoping it wasn't trivial. He asked them to come with him to Wulu Mulu Volcano, a massive volcano in the southern Delicate Mountains, revered as a place inhabited by spirits since ancient times. Wraith thanked them for coming and admitted he felt uneasy with just the three of them. Lathe owed him, so he didn't mind helping. Flustered, Wraith mumbled that it was comforting to have two ranked adventurers along. Lafay changed the subject to the spirits that made the mountain red. Lucia warned that lingering in the mountains at night could bring a cursed fire and said spirits were more powerful than humans, especially those that looked like people or animals. It dawned on her that they had already detected the spirits, which explained why the salamander spirit guarded outsiders so fiercely. Wraith hoped and the villagers would be open to discussion, and chose to visit the nearby village. It appeared calm and relaxed. A sharp gasp escaped Sylvia, making Wraith worry that something was wrong. She was simply excited about a cute plushie. Drawn to the plushies, the other girls gathered while Seth and Wraith stood by. The seller said the dolls were based on Salamander, a creature from the Lulu volcano, and they looked different from what Seth had pictured. The seller warned it was impossible to climb the volcano now. The red, warped landscape visible from the village came from Salamander's power, which made the volcano so hot it would dry humans out in minutes. If they insisted on going, they'd have to wait until Salamander fell asleep. Wraith pulled an item from his pocket, indicating they could use it to solve the problem. The seller warned that magical deception would not protect them from Salamander's power. Wraith wanted to test it anyway. Laughing, the seller wished them luck as they left the shop. Salamander was furious that the humans had dared to enter his domain, confident they could not withstand his heat. When the group reached the volcano, nobody was sweating, and Wrath was pleased his plan was working. He gave everyone an impact-resistant ring and 3 magic-strengthening rings, but each could be used only once, so he urged caution. Seth wondered how these devices could protect them when magic alone could not. The group trusted the plant's ratings and said they were fine. But a sudden voice interrupted and said it wasn't okay. Wrath asked if anyone else had heard it, but Laughing had not. Sylvia asked how far they had to go, and Lucia said it depended on where the spirit was. Wraith thought randomly attacking the mountain might draw out the spirit. Wraith jokingly kicked a stone to demonstrate. A monster suddenly appeared, and Lathe scolded him for drawing monsters, while Wraith, surprised, called it short-tempered. Surprisingly, the monster protested that it wasn't short-tempered. Wrath heard it speak, but Laffy insisted that monsters could not talk. The monster started to spin, urging Lathe to draw her sword and attack. Lauren noticed the rough ground and the monster's rock-covered back, pinpointing its exposed belly as the weak point. He used his ability to transform to target the belly, so Laffy could hit its weak spots. Gripping her sword, Laffy leaped high and struck the monster's belly, defeating it. Once they landed safely, she scolded Wrath for his reckless behavior. Wraith said that if they kept going this way, they might reach the spirit. Lathe's glare forced him to back down. With Lathe protecting him, Wrath had no choice but to follow her lead. They kept going and saw the road was a mess. Lucia suggested finding another path, but Wraith offered to create one through transformation. When he touched the ground to begin, the voice spoke again, warning him not to interfere with its territory and refusing to allow any intrusion. Looking up, Wraith saw a massive bird diving through the twilight. Tell them and shout it so everyone runs. He asked Lathe if she could take care of it. The bird didn't look like it would come down soon. Recognizing the emergency, Seth decided to use his ring. Seth struggled to control his wind magic. It suddenly faltered, slipping out of his control and threatening to erupt. Moments later, a blast sent Seth plummeting. While he was falling, before the journey, he remembered telling his sister that Wrath would make magical devices for them. Laughing, his sister said it was wonderful to see Seth having such a good time, noting it was the happiest sheet seen recently. Seth replied that Wraith's ability to speak casually with someone from a noble family made it easy. His brother's command arrived, hurling insults and belittling him once more. Seth replied that this matter didn't concern his brother, who was cold. Replied that Seth could humiliate himself as much as he wanted. Be cautious tomorrow. His brother's departure made Seth wonder if he'd done something wrong. His hope and will to live faded, and in his mind he apologized to everyone and surrendered to the fall. Without warning, Wraith dove after him to pull him to safety. Reaching out, he seized Seth's wrist. Pulling Seth close, Wrath relied on his ring's impact resistance too, to land safely with no serious injuries. He made sure Seth was okay. Seth confirmed he was. Then he thought about what had happened earlier. Seth said his brother had probably used interference magic on him beforehand, and Ray wondered whether such deadly actions were common among siblings, but, unsurprised, Seth thanked Wrath for saving him. Then he asked how they would escape. They no longer had the impact resistance ring or the magic enhancing ring, and with the volcano swarming with monsters, they needed to rejoin Laffy and the others. From where they stood, they could use their allies' status. Wraith considered waiting, but Seth called out. They stepped out and saw a massive snake watching them. They ran from the serpent until it killed them. At last, they got away from it. After running a long way, they felt disoriented. They were unsure of their location after entering the volcano that had suffered relentless monster attacks. A voice spoke to Wrath again, warning him not to interfere in its domain. He asked Seth if he'd heard any muffled voice since arriving, and Seth said he hadn't. Seth asked if Wrath had heard something, but Wrath said it was just his imagination. Wraith noticed a red rock he'd seen before and pointed it out, but Seth said the area was full of similar rocks. To stay safe, Wraith marked the rock. They continued walking only two. They found the marked rock again, proving they were trapped in a loop. They sat and brainstormed escape plans. Wraith considered confronting whoever caused the loop. Being stuck made things difficult. Seth suggested that if spatial magic created the loop, certain coordinates might be linked. Rathgren proposed they could disrupt those coordinates with a burst of earth transformation magic. Realizing what he meant, Seth tried to enter Geinber. Rafe said that true men give their all. Seth urged caution, but an explosion interrupted them. While the girls wondered where they were, Sylvia asked what would happen next. Lucia sensed they were still on the volcano. The odd location of the magic suggested they were entangled in spatial magic. As long as she could feel their magic, they were alive. Raised the question of who else could wield such advanced spatial magic. Minnie looked at her plushie and said the salamander probably saw them as enemies, so negotiating would be difficult. The creature's loud roar announced its claim to the territory, keeping people from moving freely. A monstrous figure made of wind materialized in front of them. Soft-spoken salamander spirits said they only wanted to talk. The salamander ordered them to leave at once. Sims quietly told Sylvia that Lucia should keep her magic ready at any moment. Sylvie told the salamander they had come to the volcano to find a medal found only there and asked him to free their two companions held by his master. The salamanders refused to leave, insisting they would stay forever. Laurie warned him he would regret not letting him go. Frustrated, the salamander lunged at them, but an explosion stopped him. Confused, he hesitated, and Laurie realized it was real. A scream rang out when something hit the ground. Wrath and Seth were there, and Seth grumbled that he had fallen from deadly heights twice that day despite trying to prevent it. Without their last ring of impact resistance, they would have been doomed. Ignoring Seth's complaints, Wraith grinned at the limbs and pointed back at Solomon. Both sides froze, clearly stunned to see each other. Wrath explained that his skilled help had let him blast them free with alchemy. The salamander doubted this, insisting no one could use alchemy freely in his domain. Wrath, unaware, laughed as if nothing surprised him. Lucia even noted that alchemy, though limited, might be easier to use here than magic. She suggested Wraith could be an exception. Enraged, the salamander roared again. Lucia told Sylvia to counter his magic as flames surged toward them. Ranked Wraiths shielded them, leaving the salamander stunned. Wraith's magic ring amplified Sylvia's power tenfold. Now unrestrained, the salamander vowed to burn them all to dash. Using her ring's power, Lucia struck the salamander. After the attack, everyone was stunned to see the salamander gun. Wraiths noticed a small hammer moving. The object looked like Sylvia's doll. Sylvia caught it, delighted, as it ran toward them. The salamander, still inside her, demanded she let him out. Amazed, Wrath realized the creature was the salamander. He wondered whether this was its true form, but it explained it simply by overusing its power. Grabbing it, Lucia Eames saw it was too weak to threaten them and smiled. The salamander acted strangely for a moment, then tried to bite her. She moved to hit it, but the other stopped her. When tensions eased, Wrath said they had come for a specific medal and needed the salamander to lift the volcano's magic. Still defiant, the salamander refused to submit to the invaders, so that was the end. Seeing its stubbornness, they gently told the salamander they needed something from the volcano, and politely asked him for help. Seeing her earnest eyes, he relented and told them to leave once they had it. Overjoyed, she hugged him tightly. Ray felt upstaged by the salamander, and Seth could tell he disliked its attitude. The salamander broke the spell and led them to the silvery. He warned them not to take unnecessary actions. Ray thanked him and they picked up the silvery items. Seth later returned to the Linford residence. His sister greeted him there. She asked if he was hurt. He said that with everyone's help they had accomplished their goal, and when Seth asked her, she looked puzzled. Otter stepped forward and spoke to him with confidence. He becomes very fast when interference magic is used on him. He denied it and acted offended. Seth asked for an update on his request. Confirming progress, he told Seth to be patient and let him handle it. Seth tensed about to retort, but saw Alicia watching him. Curious about what was happening, she playfully pinched his cheeks. Seth explained it was not the first time he had behaved like that and promised to discipline him once he became Lord. Lucia said she was worried about him and that his problem was going shopping with her. Seth had to set aside a day for it. Wrath walked through the town, surveying the aftermath of the volcanic eruption. Lathe and Sylvia returned home to start their next task, while Seth visited his sister and Lamb started drinking. Reminding Seth about their planned silver experiment, he noted Seth's busy schedule and that Lucia had likely been out all night, leaving him with one remaining issue. Walking into a women's shop. Nervous, he listened as the women whispered about him. Taking a deep breath, he reminded himself he was only there to buy gifts for Lathe and Sylvia. A woman's voice asked if there was Wrath. You immediately recognize Amelia. She questioned why he was there, and he clicked. He was buying gifts for Lathe and Sylvia. Amelia looked confused, so he told her they had helped him a lot recently. Seeing her sudden disappointment, she asked if he'd made up his mind yet. Wraith admitted he wasn't sure what they find cute or appealing and asked her for help. Amelia eagerly agreed to help. He said he was considering dolls as gifts, remembering that Laffy loves cute things. That was surprising, since her strength and boldness could outshine any man. Amelia cautioned him not to say that in front of her. Wrath said Lafay had earlier turned down an accessory he offered and feared the same would happen with a doll. Amelia gave him a puzzled look, thinking Lathe was too shy to accept it. She found him using something to hide this from him and chose not to explain. Her offer to pick a doll relieved Wrath, but she chose the ugliest one in the store. Wraith couldn't tell whether the doll was a mouse, a fish, or a chimera. At the same time, Amelia found it adorable. He held up her rabbit doll and asked what she thought. After a brief pause, she insisted her choice was better and that Lathe would love it. Wrathover realized people had different tastes and found the doll appealing, which annoyed him, but since Amelia had helped, he could not refuse her choice outright. He came up with a plan to buy both dolls and keep the strange doll from the girls. The next day he went to Lathe and Sylvia's house and gave them their gifts. Laffy blushed and thanked him softly. Sylvie thanked her warmly, noting Laffy's love of cute things and her shyness about buying them, which confirmed Laffy's joy. Wraith felt pleased they liked the gifts, but Lori came up behind him looking upset. She demanded to know what those hideous things were, and he admitted he didn't want to buy them either. I mentioned another gift. To make the gifts more useful for their adventurous lifestyle, he suggested making weapons for them, which piqued their interest. Since arriving in the capital, Wrath hadn't crafted any weapons, but he felt sure it would go well. They decided to forge a sword first and asked Lafay if she had any specific requests. It only had to be sharp and durable, she said. Lathe's exceptional strength required a weapon tough enough to match it. If the sword could take her swings without breaking, Lathe wouldn't be a problem. Wraith asked to see her sword, and she showed it to him. Laffy relied on her swordsmanship and strength, choosing a heavy blade because she felt light weapons lacked impact. Given the sword's weight, blade thickness, grip, and length, Wraith decided chalkum would be the best material. Lathe protested that such a valuable material wasn't necessary, but Wraith said it was fine because he rarely used it himself. He loaded charcoal and orchulcum into the furnace, heated it, and removed the orchulcum several times. When the orchulcum began to glow, he applied a strengthening treatment and hammered it, transferring the hammer's light into the metal. At last he used transformation magic and let it cool. As they waited, he began work on Sylvia's staff and asked her about her preferences. She wanted a staff light enough that it wouldn't hinder her movements. Sylvia needed her staff to do more than trigger a mage's magic. It also had to amplify magical power. Typically, such staffs were made from ores that conducted magic well and made the staff potent. Rafe considered mithril, but wanted to experiment with a different material. The key part of a staff was where the magic flowed. Instead of a standard magic gem, Wraith tried a different idea, using materials drawn from his magic power and rings, and finishing the staff with a touch of holy water. Sylvia was amazed at how quickly he finished it. Wrath explained that making a staff is much simpler than making a sword, so the work went quickly. The sword needed more time, so Wraith suggested Sylvia test her staff right away. He asked Lathe to wait until the next day for her sword, and she agreed. Outside, they searched for slimes to fulfill a request. Nostalgia hit Laughing and Sylvia because it had been a long time since they hunted slimes together. During their encounter with slimes, Wraith asked whether the creatures resisted magic or physical attacks. Laughing pointed out that a quick sword swing could still cut them. They were there to test the staff, Wrath advisors. Under strain, Sylvia began testing her new staff with wind magic. Wrath remembered that skilled mages could use wind magic to cut monsters in half. Sylvie tried to cut the slimes, but instead split the ground, stunning everyone with the staff's power. Wraith set out to collect the slimes. Noticing the laughter, felt uneasy. When Wrath asked if she still felt it, she said she felt washed. Lafayette said the feeling faded when she looked around. Sylvia feared someone might target Wrath after he chose her, but they reassured him they would protect him. A butler told a man about the race activities, saying Wrath had gone into the forest with 2 ranked adventurers to hunt slimes. The man asked if Wrath had done anything notable, and the butler said the adventurers were very close to him, one sensing his presence and becoming alert. It makes taking any action risky. The unnamed man told the butler to keep watching and to act if an opportunity arose, while waiting for Lathe and Sylvia to leave Wrath alone. The next day at Wraith's house, Lafayette and Sylvia were there. Wraith had trouble carrying Lathe's new sword because it was so heavy. Lafay lifted it easily and thanked him. When Wraith asked if she wanted to try it, she said she didn't need to because she trusted Wrath's workmanship. After receiving a request to leave the group. After the group left, Seth noted how much they trusted him, and Wraith grew shy and quickly tried to change the subject. At last they had the silver they'd been seeking, a valuable material that needed careful handling, so they opened the box and put it inside. Suddenly, the lights went out and something knocked the wreath back. Seth immediately recognized it as a magical attack and noticed others nearby. Seeing no one, Wrath urged Seth to force the intruder out. A hooded man attacked Seth, whistling as he did before. Seth collapsed from a powerful kick to the stomach. The attacker spared Seth and then turned to Wrath, leaving him puzzled. Wrath realized they wanted the silver the moment the man reached for it. Lucia's voice cut through, ordering him to freeze and warning that if he continued to harass her disciple, he'd be lucky to escape with only a few broken bones. The man threw knives toward Larry's voice, but many were already behind him. She slammed him to the ground. He was warned not to underestimate her because of her gender. When she asked Wrath what was happening, he admitted they had no idea. For now, she unmasked the intruder by pulling off his hoodie. Seth immediately recognized the man as one of the Order's lackeys. Wrath asked what they should do next. Seth said there was little they could do. If Otto found his sabotage had failed, he tried again. They tied the man up and went back to their work. 5 days later, they went to see the king. The king asked if they had a plan to save the crystal dragon, and Lucia said confidently they wouldn't be there without one. Wraith immediately approached the weak one and the dragon. Lucia helped them craft a magical device to freeze the mineral so the dragon could eat it and turn the silver inside its body back into liquid. The dragon sniffed the mineral and ate it. Then they cast transfer magic, and a black substance poured out of the dragon. Lucia used her power to extract it and stored the silver safely in a bottle. Dark marks on the dragon faded away. Within a minute, Wraith confirmed there was no silver left in the crystal dragon. Wraith told the king the crystal dragon no longer had any silver and was fully healed. Revitalized, the dragon stood and astonished the king, who thanked it. They then told Seth, and he felt relieved. Pleased, Wraith asked about Seth's progress, and Seth said the attacker confessed after some pressure, so they ordered a temporary retreat to the countryside. Taking over his family's affairs feels surreal. Bate asked about his reward, while Ray asked for some ingredients from the Linford family stock. Seth agreed but remained curious about the rates and tensions. Wrath talked about his dream of opening a shop. Later at Daisy's shop, she asked why he had come. He said he'd be back to help regularly tomorrow and wanted to ask a question. He planned to open a shop and asked Daisy to walk him through the steps. Daisy first called him foolish. He was warned that opening a shop without knowledge would be naive, so he needed to consider location, budget, and what to sell. And she added that selling only potions and ingredients would not be enough because such shops were already plentiful. Rafe suggested making magical devices, which drew more interest than his other ideas. To open a shop, he first had to get a permit from the guild. Wraith remembered the kingdom's strict rules, but his skills and accomplishments meant approval would likely come soon. Next, Wraith needed to arrange materials and funding, was advised to prioritize getting the guild's permit, was told that if he stayed committed more guidance would follow, and he thanked her. He began exploring the shop, studying its layout as a model for his own. Seeing that she didn't respond, Wraith kept browsing inside the shop. In a forest, 2 monsters pull a carriage. A carriage pulled by an earth dragon carried a black-haired girl and an adventurer. The adventurer asked if the girl was comfortable, and the girl said it was her first time in such a carriage. Ariel, an S-ranked adventurer, asked her out, but Lucia, the beautiful girl, rejected him. Ariel said she planned to meet another S-ranked adventurer, who seemed amused. At the guild, Wraith welcomed Amelia. Express it as a desire to open a shop. I've almost been congratulated. Him explaining he had to submit merchandise samples and pass a test. Examiner Keel arrived and they began the test using Wraith's merchandise samples. Amelia introduced Kyle as the examiner for people starting a business, said the test was mostly a formality so Wrath had little to worry about, and stepped away to prepare the documents. Wrath wondered why she was getting the documents ready before the exam ended. Kyle explained that Amelia was confident Wrath would pass, praised the high quality of Wrath's samples that exceeded standards, and said he was interested in buying some of Wrath's goods. Kyle insisted on verifying that Wraith had crafted the items and could produce them at scale, and he asked for a demonstration. Kaylor expected a top-quality potion to take at least a day to make, even with speed, and Kyle prepared to wait, but it was ready within 30 minutes. In 5 minutes, Ray astonishingly finished a top-quality potion. Wrath's quickness baffled her, and she muttered as he focused on his exam. Keely announced that Rafe had passed and that Amelie had returned. Admiring the potion's beauty, she handed him the documents, confident he would succeed. He asked if Lathe liked her gift. Rafe casually confirmed Lafay loved it, even though they were actually at his house. Amelia was glad that Lafayette appreciated the gift, but Rates felt guilty because he couldn't reveal the truth. He left the guild without making Amelia upset. For the next step, a strange tension lingered at Seth's house as Seth handed over the Wraith materials. The Seth's behavior hinted at something shady, even though the ingredients were ordinary. Wraith asked Seth to play along briefly, but Seth refused, doubting Wraith could carry everything. Confident, Rafe packed the materials into his magic bag and prepared to leave. Lucia burst in, slammed the door, and sobbed that she missed him, firmly convinced that Wrath was involved in a suspicious deal with a stranger. The door hit him in the face, Rate's nose was bleeding, and they handed him a napkin to stop it. Lucia apologized for assuming things. Ray admitted he was wrong to stand by the front door like that. Alicia disagreed and said she should have opened the door more carefully. Seth decided to reintroduce Wraith to his sister, confident she'd see him more often. To Wrath, she seemed a charming girl. He suddenly understood she was wise, and Seth's ambition to become a lord made him smile. Seth said she would take his place while he was away, so Wrath needed to remember her. After gathering the ingredients, Wrath was ready to head out. Seth offered a horse-drawn carriage, but Wrath declined politely. At home, Larry complained to Wrath, but he was too busy to feed her. We asked her to sort the ingredients. Creams wouldn't work while hungry. Ruth insisted that those who do not work do not eat, and that if she wanted food, she had to help. She set to work, but Wraith ignored it and inspected the shop inside and out for detoxifiers and magic strengthening rings. The interior was nearly complete, and only the exterior remained. From the outside, the house looked ordinary. They put up a sign, but it wasn't enough. Noticing the smile, he didn't want to overdo the decorations. Using his power, he turned the potted plant into a large flower. At that moment, Lafayette and Sylvia arrived. When Sylvia heard he was working on the shop's exterior, she offered to help. He said he only had the interior and exterior decorating left and asked if they could suggest a shop name. Surprised she assumed he would use his own name, Lafay felt it wasn't right and invited them inside to talk instead of staying outside. Pulling out paper and ink, he prepared to listen to their ideas. Lathe proposed a straightforward idea like alchemy. Ray thought about it briefly and seemed to like it. Lathe was surprised Ray accepted it so quickly. Believing a quick choice was better than overthinking, he genuinely thought it was a good name. They needed a logo. Lathe admitted she could not draw it but could read it. Great said it was okay. They just needed to review his design and give their feedback. He had been thinking about it for a while, but only recently became sure about opening a shop. After you show them the finished logo, both of them approved. Relieved to finish the step, Faith surprised the OAS by completing it so quickly. Lathe asked if he had done it all without them, and he said their presence helped him finish quickly. He now had to make the shop's products, and Lafay gave him a bento she had made to encourage him to do his best. Ruth was thrilled and said he would cherish it forever. Made several potions but pressed on. With plenty of ingredients from Seth, he made more products. You may be hungry. Furious, he decided to eat Lafay's handmade bento. Suddenly, Lucia appeared despite. After her interruption, he ate some of the bento and went back to work. Adventurers would want specialized rings of magic, strengthening, and impact resistance made by Grace, known for his exceptional skills. Those would be the shop's signature items. Grace also planned to sell everyday goods he modified for easier use. Wraith made his products hoping housewives would like them for making household chores easier. For the final touch, he put his logo on every item, determined to make his shop thrive. Wraith displayed the logos outside with pride. Despite that, he was ready for business. Early morning meant no customers yet, but he was sure the shop would be busy within a couple of hours. Convinced that high-quality products would sell well, Wrath was shocked after a few months. For 3 days, the shop stayed empty, and when Daisy came by, she saw that he looked gloomy and asked why he was so down. Overwhelmed, Wrath began to cry over his lack of customers. Later that day, Daisy returned to Wraith's shop to see how business was going. Wrath said he had put up a sign, refreshed the shop's interior, and designed a logo, but still had no customers and was getting desperate. Daisy said sitting idle would not help and asked if he had tried other steps, such as actively attracting customers or using his reputation to promote the shop. It was clear Wraith hadn't made any effort to attract customers. For days he was stunned, complaining about the lack of business while taking no action. She pointed out that potion shops were common in the capital, so an unknown shop with nothing unique could not compete. Reminding him of his fame, she said he couldn't afford to ignore that advantage. Wraith seemed to understand what he needed to do and asked Daisy about opening her shop. Daisy said her adventuring contacts spread the word through the guild, which helped her build a customer base. Rafe realized he could use his social connections to promote his shop and liked the idea. Daisy said top-quality products would likely gain traction on their own, even with little effort, as long as he got a few customers to spread the word. She stressed the need to actively attract the first patrons. Clear on his next steps, Wrath eagerly began putting his plan into action. Daisy urged Wrath to keep going, teasing that he did not need it, but she wished him luck anyway. Wrath set off, remembering Daisy's advice, and decided to find someone skilled at spreading the news. At that moment, a girl named Lucia came up to ask for directions to the Adventurers Guild. Ray was charmed by Lucia and led her to the guild. They thanked him and moved on. Perched on her head, the fox said it was lucky Rain knew the way, and now they only needed to buy potions to earn some money. Lucia kept glancing at Wrath, and the fox asked if the young man had caught her attention, since she rarely showed interest in others. Lucia guessed Wrath was an alchemist. The fox remarked that he seemed young, likely about Lucia's age. Foxionan said he trusted Lucia to handle things and was ready for a nap, and he told her to wake him if anything happened. Dozing off, Lucia tried to follow Wrath's directions, but got lost. 1 week later, at the Ventures Guild, Wrath wondered if the girl he'd helped had arrived there. He remembered the three-tailed fox on the girl's head and thought it would make a striking mascot for his shop. Austin thought he hadn't heard Amelia call him. Apologizing, Wreath said he had been thinking about some ideas. Amelia noticed his serious expression and asked what was on his mind. Giggling, he brushed it off as nothing major and said he had finally opened his shop, but it wasn't doing as well as he'd hoped. This surprised Amelia. Luffy joined them and said she thought his shop would be so busy he'd struggle to manage it. Ray admitted running a business was harder than it looked. Lathy asked whether he had any strategies in mind. Daisy had suggested creating a mascot or featuring a poster girl, but he was still thinking it over. Laughing, he nodded, aware that it was really weighing on him. Amelia entered the room and apologized to Wrath for keeping him waiting. Handing over some papers, she stressed he should handle them carefully because they were important documents for his shop. Wraith said he was finished there and ready to leave. He wished Amelia and Lathe good luck, and they wished him the same for his shop. Wraith could not get out of the room. Someone burst in suddenly, shouting that the shine had returned. Shock filled the room as people tried to understand the commotion. Some people recognized the man and say they haven't seen him in a while. Wrath heard someone say he was one of the few ranked individuals, while Lathe tried to stay out of his sight, and Sylvia asked what Lathe was doing but was shushed. She said she'd never seen Lathe so serious, not even during your volcano mission. Wrath tried to figure out what was wrong despite Luffy's attempts to hide Ariel, who had burst in and seen her. Wrath asked whether Ariel was the ranked person who had slammed the door open. Kirio greeted Laffy, asked how long it had been and whether she was doing well, and Laffy, thinking he was a jerk, quietly replied that it had been a while. Ariel dropped to one knee and asked her out. Luffy trembled as he reminded him that she had rejected him countless times and was not interested. Wrath was stunned to learn it had happened more than once. Ariel demanded he admit he'd laughed many times and said she would keep insisting while she remained single. He vowed to keep confessing until she agreed. Shocked and desperate to deflect him, Lafty made a plan, glanced at Wrath and told Ariel she was already with someone. Ariel, taken aback, asked if he'd heard correctly and demanded to know who it was. Rafe, equally shocked, did not recognize Lafayette's companion. Safi moved quickly toward Wrath and grabbed his arm, and told Ariel that Wrath was her partner. Silence fell over the room, and everyone, including Ariel and Wrath, was quiet. Ariel stared in surprise and skeptical, told Lafayette that lying wasn't right, saying he'd never seen her with Wraith, while Lafayette forced a strange smile, explaining she couldn't always be seen with him publicly and claiming she met Wraith while Ariel was away on requests. Though Ariel struggled to believe her, she turned inward to confirm she had made the effort. Sylvia Backlaffy confirmed they had met Wraith while Ariel was away and admitted she wasn't sure if Laffy and Wraith were truly together, but that Laffy had not been lying. Ariel confronted Wraith directly and asked whether he was really dating Laffy. Wrath paused, and when Lathe squeezed his arm so hard he thought she might break it, he nervously confirmed they were together. Puriel was disappointed and could not accept that this had happened while he was away. He stared in disbelief, pointed at Wrath, called his name, and warned Lathe not to trust him. Ariel, still shocked, stormed out of the room. The moment Lathe released Wrath's arm, he collapsed in pain. The crowd began whispering about the scene. When Ariel left, Lafayette sat with Wraith and apologized for the incident with. Regarding the blonde guy, she said she and Ariel had known each other for a while as fellow ranked adventurers, and from the moment they met he kept confessing his feelings. As Wrath had seen, she always rejected him, but he wouldn't stop, so she felt forced to make up a lie. After reconnecting with Wrath, she decided to deceive Ariel by claiming Wrath was her boyfriend. She asked Wrath to pretend to be her boyfriend until Ariel gave up. Grinning, he said he'd already hinted at this to Ariel and agreed to go along with the plan because she felt comfortable with it. Have Laffy apologize again, express gratitude, and check that he was really okay with it. Wrath said that from a guy's perspective, Ariel was quite attractive and could form an impressive adventuring duo with him if she chose. She admitted Ariel wasn't a bad person, but his personality didn't suit her. Wrath asked what they should do to convince others they were a couple. Laffy blushed and shyly suggested they go on dates. As soon as she mentioned it, he blushed too. She said the dates would be fake because Ariel still doubted their relationship, so they had to be careful not to mess up. Wrath admitted Lathe was right and promised to do his best. Lathe thanked him sincerely again. Sylvia was sure Wrath would support Lathe in her time of need. Wrath set off on his journey right after arranging things with Laffy. The agreement to pose as her lover was still fresh in his mind. The link is in the description. While you were walking on, he spotted a girl lying still on the ground, realized she had collapsed, and immediately focused on her well-being, gently lifting her and asking if she was all right. Worry laced his voice as he held her and studied her face closely, and a spark of recognition crossed his mind. Recognition hit him, and relief flooded him when her chest rose and fell so he knew she was breathing, her familiar face calming him as he kept checking for signs of awareness, and then a fox approached, and Wrath asked who he was. Claiming to be Letitia's friend, the fox asked for help on her behalf. Wraith was stunned that the fox could speak. The girl looked like she was trying to say something. He leaned closer and asked if she was okay as she struggled to ask for help. Her stomach rumbled as she admitted she was hungry. Wraith fetched some bread for her. The fox said they had been cheated out of all their money, leaving them unable to buy food. Wraith sympathized with their situation. After she ate the bread, he asked who she was. She replied that she was low in the fog. Mimi admitted he was a spirit, and Ray said it was rare for a spirit and a human to be companions. Mimi said the spirit had been with her for a long time and called Lo like a daughter to him, which Ray found strange, so Ray asked what their plans were moving forward. Lo said she was looking for an alchemist named Wraith. Wraith seemed surprised. His shock grew when she said she was looking for someone named Wrath, so he revealed he was Wrath and asked why she had come to find him, and she said she wanted to be his disciple. Wrath froze at first, then spoke up in shock and asked what she meant. She said rumors had spread that he was a remarkable alchemist who made elixirs, though she didn't expect him to be so young. Amazed that his reputation had spread to other countries, Wrath was torn because his duties at the shop, and his laughing left no time for a disciple, but he couldn't bring himself to refuse her when he saw her flushed cheeks. Again, she asked him to teach her alchemy. Thinking of a solution, he said he would accept her as a disciple only under two specific conditions, offering Lucia a job at his shop and promising to teach her alchemy while giving her the freedom to leave. Using Lador, he could stay at the shop and teach her whenever she wanted. Lucia accepted the first condition. His second request was for the spirit to be the shop's mascot. Unsure about its role, the spirit learned from him that a mascot just stays in the shop where customers might chat with it or try to pet it. The spirit felt proud but hesitant about human interaction. It remained an appealing choice as a talking fox, making the shop unique. Hope in her eyes, Patacia asked the fox again. The spirit couldn't resist her and agreed. Wrath asked how long she'd stay in the capital, and because she hadn't decided, he offered her a place at his shop until she sorted out her living arrangements. At home, Lucia froze when she saw Wrath with an unfamiliar girl. He shushed her and said the girl would work there from now on. As they climbed the stairs, Letitia asked about the woman, and he explained she was his mentor who also lived there. After showing Letitia her room, he tested her alchemy with a black crystal, a device from her homeland that measured an alchemist's skill by using sublimation. Her touch made the crystal sparkle brightly. Clearing the crystal to 70% was impressive for a skilled alchemist, but Letitia reached 90%, and Wrath, curious, tested himself. Never before had he measured his own power. The crystal glowed intensely. That made him collapse in pain. Letitia checked on him and found him fine. He wondered why the crystal broke, and Letitia suggested he might have overloaded its capacity at first for her. She asked to watch him make a magical device, which surprised Wrath, who. They expected her to ask for potions, but Lucia explained that although she made potions, her specialty was magical devices. You asked which device to make, and she left the decision to him. To beat the summer heat, he made a cooling device out of a large sheet of paper, a pen, and a necklace. He filled the pen with white powder, explaining that this is a special pen. One could apply material effects directly without tracing magic circles with specific materials. Break the magic circle drawn on the paper. Place the necklace on it and finish assembling the device below. Letitia looked unimpressed. He asked what she wanted and she asked for a ring, noting he was giving one to another girl. Watching, Lucia misread the situation and panicked. Assuming Wrath was in a relationship, he asked whether it seemed romantic, and she admitted he wasn't bold enough for that. Lucia asked what they were doing, and Wrath said he was testing Letitia's alchemy. After introductions, Wrath told Lucia that Letitia would live on the second floor starting today, then urged Lucia to continue, and she whispered a spell to enchant the ring. Lucy explains the pricing rate based on her use of magic. Often she made attack-focused magical devices because she was talented at magic. Lucia had assumed Lucia came to learn magic, but Wrath said that wasn't the case, and Lucia was confused by how Wrath's approach to making magical devices differed from her own. Lucia cut in to ask Wraith to teach her magic circles, and Wraith doubted her commitment, saying it was difficult and suggesting other lessons, but Lucia promised she would try her hardest. At dinner, Wraith asked what spirits eat. The fox explained that spirits, unlike weak humans, do not need food. Lowry explained that spirits sustain themselves on magical energy, and when it runs out, they lose their memories and are reborn as spirits. When asked about her origins, Lucia said she comes from Wano country. Wrath hadn't seen it, but Lowry had visited and described how it looked. Experienced luxurious drinks and snacks with a unique flavor. She noticed the place felt different, even in the style of its buildings. The country prized politeness, which made Wrath curious about Lucia's hometown. Larry noticed how young Lucia looked and asked whether she had always studied alchemy, and Lucia exclaimed. She explained her passion for alchemy, but her parents enrolled her in a magic training school. Lucia asked whether Lucia had a special ability since schools were mostly for nobles, but Lucia avoided the question. Wraith changed the subject and asked how the spirit fox became her companion, and Mimi gave a vague answer, saying only that Lucia had formed a contract with him as a child. Lucia was stunned that Lucia entered a spirit contract, in which spirits draw magical energy to grant immense power far beyond ordinary magic. Smiling, Wrath announced that Lucia would start working at their shop tomorrow and be a great asset, and Lucia teased him about whether he found Lucia cute. They suggested making flyers to dodge the rate prompts, and Lori and I agreed for once. Then, the next question was repeated many times and "I'm sorry" was said over and over. When their shop opened the next day, Wrath was disappointed despite the mascot, but he stayed hopeful, noting a slow first day was normal. The shop's bell rang while Lafayette and Sylvia were there. Be one of the first customers, or drop by and ask about the shop's progress. Wraith welcomed them and introduced Lucia. Sylvia was delighted by Mimi and asked about the tiny creature. Wrath explained that he was Lucius's contracted spirit, which made Sylvia a little anxious. Ray III reassured Sylvia and encouraged her to pet Mimi because they were guests. As Sylvia talked with Mimi, Wraith asked Lathe why she had come. Lathe, a bit shy, said she wanted to talk about their pretend relationship, with Wraith acting as her partner. Ray called Lathe to ask for a low-traffic day, and as he can see. After checking his schedule, Lathe boldly asked him out on a date. Wrath was stunned by her request, almost overwhelmed with surprise. In the next chapter, Adventure Rick dozed off while examining a small potion. His partner said they were near the quest location and asked what he was doing. Rick said he was curious about a potion from an unfamiliar shop and did not trust its claimed effects. His partner was stunned that he bought such a thing, especially a potion to enhance physical abilities. Rick admitted it seemed odd, but trusted the shopkeeper's honesty and drank the potion to test it against. A massive poison spider, avoiding its own venom within. An unexpectedly high jump. Suspecting the potion was responsible for his enhanced abilities, he decided to verify it. He sliced through two of the spider's legs with ease and landed firmly on the ground. His speed, agility, and control were clearly much improved. Amazed by the potion's effects, he gained confidence and single-handedly vanquished the spider without help from his partner. After he easily defeated the creature, his partner's first question was who had made the potions at the shop. Wraith checked the potion stock, and placed the new items where they were easy to see. Pleased with the organized setup, he grasped the door handle and told Lucia it was almost time to open. They probably wouldn't see many customers today, but they should still give it their all. Lucia nodded, opened the door slowly, and was stunned to find a large crowd eagerly waiting for the shop to open. Wrath was in disbelief and thought it might be a dream that would vanish when the door was fully opened, but when he opened it, he was open. Swamped by a rush of customers, they bought so many items that the shelves were bare well before closing time. In the empty store, Wrath and Lo, catching their breath, struggled to comprehend the sudden surge of business. A customer came up and asked if they had sold out. Rafe confirmed a huge group had just cleared out their stock, and curious, asked if she knew why so many people had come. Seeing he was unaware, the other explained that rumors had spread over the past few days about a shop selling remarkable potions and magical devices, and items marked with a flame were especially trusted. As Rafe processed the revelation that asked whether he accepted orders. He confirmed he had done so, took her order, and thanked her. Wrath did not expect his logo to boost the shop's popularity so much. He felt elated, motivated to build on the momentum. He decided to make more items while they still had plenty of materials. After closing the shop, Lucia and Mimi looked exhausted, and Wraith praised their efforts while warning that tomorrow could be just as hectic. Though they seemed weary of the workload, Wraith reminded Lucia, prompted by her commitment, kept going. She reluctantly agreed to do her best. That evening, Wrath had a date with Laffey set up to pursue Ariel, and he felt anxious despite pretending to be her boyfriend. Lafayette arrived at their meeting spot, and Wraith flushed at the sight of her. Apologizing for the delay, she showed a shyness that matched his. Impressed by her look, Wrath asked if she chose the outfit, and Lefty credited Sylvia. Ariel watched them from a distance, while Wraith wondered what couples usually do on dates. Laffey commented on the surprising rate of his shop's success, which she had noticed, and realized she was not in a good mood. Observers noted adventurers were buzzing about the flame-marked potions and a three-tailed fox. Ray realized this matched the customer's earlier remarks and confirmed his shop's growing reputation by word of mouth, a strategy Daisy had suggested when he asked her for advice. Lucia and Mimi helped make the shop popular by charming customers of every age and gender. Wraith hoped the success would last. Giggling, she said she doubted the excitement would fade given the exceptional quality of his products. Flattered but embarrassed, Wraith thanked her and quietly hoped the momentum would hold. Today Wrath had left the shop and was in someone else's care. They suddenly heard a child sobbing loudly. Instinct pushed Wraith to help, but Laffy held him back. Moments later, Ariel appeared, offering the child the flower and speaking to the crying child. That did not suit her lovely face. Although he was kind, the child stayed upset and kept crying. Curious about the man's odd clothes, Wrath suspected he had been following them. The guards arrived and removed the Ariel. The urge they felt to escape while they had the chance. Hesitating, Wrath noted the man seemed unwilling to give up on her, so she said she had a plan. She described a yearly festival in New York. In the capital, the focus was on the incredible parade and the unique shops that appeared. Sylvia had been pestering her to go to the festival, just the two of them, she explained. Ariel would probably keep watching, so appearing together at the festival could make him think they were a couple. Wrath agreed, saying festivals are classic date spots and he was fine with that. Since Lathe also agreed to the plan, they went ahead. They went through with it. After a short pause, Ray realized Ariel had been taken away, so continuing the date was unnecessary and they ended it. A week later, Lucia asked Wrath if he really planned to go to the festival. He said it was already noon, so the crowd should be more manageable, and Lucia felt nervous about going alone, but Ray reassured her and praised her confidence. After struggling to take charge on their last date, Wrath felt embarrassed and was determined to make this festival date a success. He sought Daisy's help to make that happen. Wraith apologized for arriving unannounced and said he urgently needed Daisy's help. Noticing Sylvia there, he stammered, asking why she was present. She let a grin slip and questioned what he thought she was doing. Daisy explained that Sylvia had asked her for help with something Sylvia didn't understand. After Wraith suggested a plan, Sylvie reminded him of his promise to go to the festival with her sister and pointed out he wasn't familiar with the capital's festival, which could keep him from leading confidently and setting a good mood. She offered. Someone stepped in to help his date breathe, sensing his unease. Unaware that he had come to Daisy for that reason, she asked if he could handle it alone. Daisy either understood the request or was unsure why they had chosen her. Sylvie said Wraith didn't know many people to ask. Daisy asked if he was dating an S-ranked adventurer. Wraith explained he was only pretending to date her to help her avoid an unwanted suitor. Daisy looked puzzled by the situation, and Sylvia suggested they ask Amelia if Daisy couldn't help. Ruth refused to involve Amelia, knowing how she'd react. Daisy saw no problem with Amelia since Amelia was an adult, but when Rafe pleaded for her help, Daisy began to wonder why he was so desperate for her. He insisted it was extremely important to him. Moved by his repeated pleas, Daisy agreed to help. Sylvia eagerly suggested they start preparing for the festival. Daisy was still working, so they postponed. 300 years ago, when the country was founded, people began the Royal Dragon Festival to honor the crystal dragon and wish for the kingdom's prosperity. It grew over time until the whole capital joined the celebration, and everyone in the capital now knows it and looks forward to it each summer. Astonished, Wraith took in the event's grandeur. When Lathi asked if he was enjoying his first Royal Dragon Festival, he said everything he'd seen was incredible, and he could see why it was so popular. Seeing Lathe in her stunning outfit, he couldn't help but compliment her loudly. Fortunately, as explained, Lafe did not hear him. Despite being suspected, Ariel was still watching them. Scanning for the others, Wraith couldn't find them because Sylvia and the girls were hiding. Nicola was thrilled to be with Daisy, and Sylvia, though Daisy already looked exasperated, and Lucia noted Wraith lacked experience with women, so it was hard to get him to act like a proper boyfriend. Spotting Ariel, she asked if he was okay. When the escort learned there was no need to worry about him, and note that Wreath had bought something for Lafe. When he handed her candy dapples, their hands brushed and they both blushed and stepped back. Laurie and Sylvia watched Rafe and Lathe interact with delight, while Niccolo tried to ask Daisy out. Daisy firmly rejected her. Nicola found Daisy's firmness adorable, while Daisy just wanted her to leave. Sylvia and Lucia brainstormed ways to help Rake and Laugh grow closer. A group of men came over and began flirting with them. Sylvia fixed them with a terrifying glare that made them shiver. The man explained they were just looking for fun. Since it was their first time in the capital, Laura stepped in, said they were unfamiliar with the area, and suggested the men ask someone else, but the men continued offering to explore together. Someone grabbed Daisy's shoulder and offered to hang out, but a menacing voice told him to let go. His hand froze instantly. While the girls shielded Daisy, Sylvia stared the men down. They insisted they only wanted to have fun, but Sylvia became serious and told them to leave. Focused on helping her sister and Wrath, Sylvia had no time for random strangers and considered causing an accident to freeze the "Tell your legs to wait for a small request." Back at the festival, Wrath and Lafe ate street meat. Wrath saw shops from different places, and Lafe suggested buying unique creatures as souvenirs. He remembered Lucian saying she would be at the festival, probably sampling food nearby. I hoped Luria Eames had only been home drinking when the men who had been bothering Sylvia and Laura arrived and started harassing her. They kept laughing, but Wraith didn't think it was flirting because they looked scared and kept glancing over their shoulder. Lathe refused to go with them, meeting their gaze with the same fierce look Sylvia had. Terrified, they ran away. And Laughter was puzzled by the encounter. Sylvia watched her plan fail and collapsed in frustration. Unaware of the scheme, Luria praised for Lackey's bravery. Sylvia had hoped Wrath could protect Lackey from thugs. When Lathe proved too tough, Sylvia stood up and decided to focus on Wraith directly to ensure her sister's happiness. Sylvia told Luria they had to bring Wrath and Luffy closer through physical contact. Luria wanted to know more about the plan. Sylvia planned to use wind magic to nudge Wraith toward Laphasupli. Once the plan is set, they combine their powers to grow. Create a gust that moves the Wraith closer to Laffy. Wraith stumbled and his face landed against Lackey's chest. Panicked, he apologizes quickly. Sylvia and Laura were thrilled because this was their goal. Spotting a game stall, Laffy and Ray went over to check it out. Wraith nervously played a ring toss game. He thought he'd nest. At the last moment, the ring landed on the stick. Wraith tried it. Tried again and succeeded. People crowded around him, but he was confused, unsure how he had won. Sylvia and Luria had quietly helped him. Seeing the crowd grow, Lurie said they might have gone a bit overboard. Sylvia agreed that his sister was slipping into work mode and suggested they lure him, since that seemed to be their only option. Let's have them enjoy the festival, and Wraith said he'd find a place to sit for the fireworks after the game. Suddenly, both Wraiths were able to enjoy the festival, and Wraith said he'd find a place to sit for the fireworks after the game. Suddenly, both Wraiths were able to enjoy the festival, and Wraith said he'd find a place to sit for the fireworks after the game. Suddenly, both Wraiths were able to enjoy the festival, and Wraith said he'd find a place to sit for the fireworks after the game. Suddenly, both Wraiths were able to enjoy the festival, and Wraith said he'd find a place to sit for the fireworks after the game. He saw a fight coming and, trying to avoid her, he said he would grab some drinks, but it was too late to get away. Amelia grinned and asked where Sylvia was, assuming they were alone at the festival. Latte tried to clarify by mentioning the situation with Ariel, and Amelia acknowledged it, saying they seemed close and noting the festival was a popular spot for couples. Wrath noticed fog forming as she spoke and glanced at his hand. The Ritz ring that nullifies magic suddenly cracked. This showed the thought was magical, Amelia collab. It startled both of them. Wrath checked her and confirmed she was fine, only asleep. Lathe felt relieved but puzzled about the situation. Wraith suggested the fog could be laced with sleep magic. His ring kept him safe, and Lafty told him she felt fine, saying the fog affects people differently and seems to push them to act while they can still move. Thick fog blanketed the area, a clear sign a powerful mage was behind it. Rafe wondered how many people in the capital were still awake. Lathe suggested they look for anyone still conscious, and since they didn't know when the fog would lift, they decided to explore other areas. Fog thickened, and they could be facing someone as strong as or stronger than a mentor. Rafe had to act, but he would rather have Amelia's teasing than deal with this crisis. They walked on and found everyone else asleep. Lathe sensed the presence and called out, revealing. Ariel greeted them, laughed, asked if he knew anything, and he admitted he did not. He figured that those still awake, himself and Lafay, had strong magic resistance because they were ranked adventurers. Lucia and Sylvia hid Daisy and Nicola somewhere safe, then set out to find Wrath. Lafay tried to trace Wrath's magic but found her own blocked. Sylvia found it hard to sense her sister's magic meant to lure him because two other magic sources interfered, one laughing at the end. Sylvia suspected the other source was Ariel, a ranked adventurer they were trying to lure. Sims remembered Ariel as the adventurer who loved Lafay. When asked, she confirmed her magic held up in the fog. Lucia chose to keep flying while her magic lasted. Eventually, they found Wraith and the others. Rafe was stunned to see them arrive through the air and joked that they were drunk. A voice cut in and they prepared to attack. Mimi mocked their weakness. That's a good question about why she was there and where Lucia was. Mimi said Lucia started the fire. Wrath looked puzzled when Ninny said Lucia, and Ninny clarified it was not the usual Lucia. He asked if the quiet, expressionless Lucia was the one who got bothered. Mimi said the Lucia he knew was the light Lyria. The one casting this magic was Dark Lucia, a half-human, half-vampire hybrid. Once a magical race more than 1,000 years ago, vampires ruled the night with blood-sucking and superior physical abilities, but trouble reproducing led to their decline into history. Many people said Lucia had not fully mastered her powers, and when she was low on blood or drunk her personality changed, and she went berserk. Mimi said Lucia was in her dark vampire mode right now, using her power to shroud the capital in fog. Wraith asked when the mode would end, and Mimi said it could last from half a day to more than a day. Lucia's power as a hybrid far exceeded that of normal humans, and because she was Mimi's contracted spirit, Mimi could not intervene to stop her. Wraith considered what first caused her to lose control and said she had only drunk a little alcohol, with Nimi encouraging her to drink. Wraith asked Lucia for her thoughts, and she said no strategy was needed. Their goal was only to stop Lucia, so they worried about possible injuries, but Ariel stepped in and reassured them. He would handle him. Ariel gave a sly wink and said his potions would make things work better. Once everyone was ready, Mimi urged them to follow and ran ahead. Lathe offered Wrath her hand and said flying would be quicker as Sathya grabbed Lathe. After a rough flight, they landed. Unaccustomed to flight, Wrath felt sick and saw his life flash before him as a dark, spotted Lucia hovered above. Delighted, she commented on the appetizing group below her. Her grin convinced Wrath this was not the usual Lucia, though he thought they could still reason with her. Mimi cautioned them to stay alert because Lucia would not hold back. Lucy shrugged off the need for caution. Lucia politely asked Lucia to lift the fog spell and scolded her for causing trouble in the capital. Lucia's tone hardened when she refused, even calling her an old woman, which provoked her. Wrath stopped and asked Lucia why she had caused all this chaos. Lucia replied she didn't have any specific game in mind and just wanted to have fun after being confined for so long. In an instant, she stood before Wrath. She invited him to join her, and Wrath, stunned by her speed, froze while the woman prepared to strike. Lucia swung a kick at Lucia, who nimbly stepped aside and laughed that such a move wouldn't catch her. A glance back proved costly. Sharp ice shot out and trapped her. Still dazed, Wrath wondered whether she had teleported. Realizing something, he told them to bind her at once. But Lucius killed someone and vanished. Dismissive of their magic as too weak to affect her, she circled them in the air. Wraith realized she was moving by turning into fog, and Sylvia tried to ensnare her with a chain. But Lucius slipped free with ease. Lucian realized Sylvia wasn't trying to strike her and questioned her intent. Lucia stood surrounded by countless chains, and so, it still needs to be clarified that she wasn't trying to hit her, but was trying from the start to trap her in a chain ball. Lucia realized the chains were there to limit her movement, forming a sphere that kept her from escaping. Admitting she had underestimated Sylvia's cleverness, she watched Lucius's power burn every chain and free her. Next, Laffy confronted her, but something happened when they made contact. Lucid turned her arm into fog, sending Lathe crashing down. As Laffy apologized for failing, Wraith marveled that she could leap like that in a yukata. Lackey warned him they might not be able to stop her without causing harm. Wrath resisted, insisting there had to be another way, but Luria warned that Lucio was the source of the fog and was easily fending them off, so if they did not act decisively, the situation could get worse. They carried out a coordinated assault. Lucia fought back as the struggle intensified. Wraith asked Minnie for a solution. Minnie said vampires have certain weaknesses: sunlight, crosses, running water, fire, and holy water. Sunlight could be used at night, and Luria's group was already using water and fire. Lucia was immune to conjured elements, so they had to rely on natural sources. Holy water is their best option. Wraith carried one bottle, hoping it could stop her if they hit her with it. Lucia came up behind him and grabbed the bottle. Laffy kicked her and then checked whether he was all right. Wraith said Lucia had taken the holy water. Lucia opened the bottle, poured it out, and said sneaking around alone only made him more noticeable. Lucy laughed as she began taunting and insulting Wraith. Wrath trembled but did not react to her jabs. He told the girls he wasn't angry, only inspired to come up with a cruel plan to make her cry. The girls were worried about his plan, but he assured them it wouldn't hurt her and that he'd need help from all three. Luria refused to support the plan if it meant doing something awful, while Wraith insisted it was harmless. Sylvia asked how they could help. He beckoned them closer and whispered the plan while Lucia watched, still confused. He ordered them to lure her into the open space by Southgate and, if possible, keep her from fleeing. The task was difficult. Wraith urged them to follow through, and while they whispered, promised to handle the rest. Ariel attacked suddenly, but Lucia dodged easily. Mocking her as an old woman, Lucian made her even angrier. Roughly, Luria conjured several balls of water. They fired them at Lucia as she. Distracted by the water balls, Lucia saw Sylvia's chains appear in front of her face. Sylvia challenged her to dodge or risk injury and damage to her beauty. Lucia realized they'd been holding back. Now enjoy the challenge, pushing them to give their all as you evade them. They guided her toward the area Wrath had mentioned, wherever it was. They came to a stop, and Lucian, seeing their intent, halted. Ray told everyone to follow his exact instructions and assumed responsibility for the outcome. Lucia wondered who would approach her first, expecting either Luria or Sylvia. Surprisingly, Wrath attacked first. Lucia was puzzled because Wraith could neither fight nor use magic. She kept her distance, doubting his ability. Wrath compressed the fountain until it shattered. Noticing the danger, Lucia ran. Lathe kept after her. Laughter nearly overtook her. Disoriented, Lucia turned, and Luria and Sylvia appeared behind her. Wrath ordered Luria to build walls to trap Lucia in the area, not caring how she did it. Skilled at magic, Luria welcomes the task. Wrath wasn't trying to push Lucia into the fountain, he wanted the fountain to come to her. Using the compression power again, he made the fountain burst. The explosion caused a brief rain, and Lucia, falling from the sky, started to lose consciousness. Someone caught her before she hit the ground. Wraith checked they were safe, then, shocked, noticed that the Laughing and Lucia were soaked. Lathe asked why he was staring. Mumbling that they were close, he was scolded for staring at them. Wraith noticed Luria and Sylvia stayed dry because Luria used wind magic to dry them. Lucia came to and said Wraith had really outdone her. She smiled at her defeat, amused that someone without magic had bested her. Wraith was pleased he'd surprised her. Wraith reflected that the dark Luria's taunts had caused them a lot of trouble. Once that was settled, it was time for Lucius's trouble. Wrath and Luria chased her, and Wrath gave her a few spanks. Williams, playing Lucia, vowed never to repeat her action. Later, Lucia said Wrath may have gone too far. That was behind them, so they shouldn't dwell on it. Wraith asked Lucia what she remembered. Pleased to learn she remembered everything, she sincerely apologized. They seemed genuinely remorseful, and Mimi praised everyone, but said she expected them to finish sooner since it was 4 against 1. Wraith was getting used to her jabs, and with Lucia back to normal and the fog lifting, people began to cry. Wrath felt like it was a dream as he drifted off. An aerial heat check made sure everyone was safe. They thanked him. He said he'd been checking whether Wrath and Lathe were dating. Wrath had forgotten the mission came from him. Asking Ariel about his findings, he learned that he and Lafay were a couple. Both pretended not to know about the Real's investigation, and though skeptical, Ray realized it had achieved their goal. Ariel said unexpectedly that if Wreath ever stopped loving Laffy, Ariel would step in and declare his own love. Before disappearing, he urged Wrath to keep Lassie happy. A week later, Wrath seemed down. Lathe asked how long he would stay that way. Mimi looked just as glum, and Seth, who was there too, told him to move on. Destruction of fountains, damaged roads, citywide magical disturbances, disrupted festivals, and hostile use of magic were serious crimes that typically led to jail. Wraith understood but thought the cost was too high. Lucia, disheartened, said they were broke. Sylvia offered to help cheer them up. Wrath declined, saying it was between him and Lucia, and with no other option he decided to pay the expenses. Lucia protested, but he reminded her she had no right to argue after she collapsed penniless. Seeing her expression, he made clear it would not be free and that she would work hard in his shop to repay him. She accepted and thanked him. He pointed out things might have been different if she had been upfront. She apologized and explained that non-human races were involved. She faced discrimination like vampires, including being denied service or attacked, which kept her silent. Ray III assured her that the people in the capital were kind. He told Lathe that alchemists were helping roadside stragglers and female adventurers, and Lathe agreed, noting discrimination against non-human women was easing as more of them became adventurers. She welcomed Lucia back to the capital. The main problem was their next steps. Earning enough from the shop alone would be difficult. Seth handed the paper to Rate, asking what he thought. It was an application for a temporary teaching position at the Royal Academy of Magic. Will's Radium led the school, 7. Seth was shocked that Wrath knew him and was curious about his connections. Rafe said it wasn't on purpose. Seth asked about the alchemy teacher role. The pay was good. Temporary teachers could help, letting Rafe run his shop. Alicia, his sister, was at Academy too, so Ray figured 2 familiar faces would make it manageable. Still, he doubted himself, lacked teaching experience, and couldn't picture addressing a class. Mimi encouraged him, but Ray felt she didn't understand his hesitation. Lara trusted him completely. Wraith worried the students would not respect him because he was nearly their age. Sylvia said she would enjoy his class, and to consider the job, intending to ask Seth's sister for help if needed. Seth chuckled, noticing she was younger than he was. Wraith handled things easily despite being younger than the less composed Seth, and after playfully teasing him, Seth went to get ready. They continued working at the shop, and months later, Wraith and Seth reached the Royal Academy for Wraiths to meet the Wells. At the door, Wrath hesitated and asked if meeting Wells was necessary, but Seth insisted because Wrath would be working there, so they knocked and entered Wells's room. Will greeted Wrath politely, and they both exchanged forced smiles. Will said he'd heard a lot about Wrath since they last met. Will then asked why Wraith chose their academy. Seeing Wrath's nervous expression, Will thought he had gone too far and apologized. Wrath wondered whether Will knew about the fountain he had destroyed. Will assured him that whatever the reason, they were thrilled to have an alchemist of his skill. He asked whether Wraith had reviewed the documents. Wraith confirmed he had already seen the documents sent to him. As agreed, he would work as an assistant teacher in the academy classes. They put off discussing the employment terms for now. Until the test, he was to follow the lead teacher's instructions. If he noticed anything during classes, he could offer input. Wrath could give his input whenever he wanted, and when he asked if he would be helping, he learned the teacher was Helga. The name made Seth nervous. Will remembered Helga had been Seth's teacher at the academy. Wrath asked whether health counts as a personality trait. Although Will called him an excellent teacher, Wraith wanted more than his teaching skills. He clarified he wanted to know who Helga was as a person. It was clear he clashed with Will, who signed the papers and suggested meeting Helvet to judge for himself. Will was certain Helga would have specific class instructions. Surprised, Wrath took Will's words as teasing. Will said he had expected to work together and dismissed them. Wrath exhaled heavily in the hall, vowed to avoid Will's for years, and Seth thought Wrath was overreacting but agreed. Read Will's constant smiling annoyed me, and I promised to mention it next time. Rafe paused to consider Helga's character. Seth said she wasn't a bad person but struggled. Describe him so Wraithade will understand when they meet. Seth steered him toward Helga's room. Wrath stood stunned as he stepped into a vast, book-filled room far larger than his workshop. He realized he needed to be more organized than he had thought to handle everything. When Seth asked what kind of person he had in mind, thinking Helga was as disorganized as Lucia, he taught her only what he knew well. Seth found it odd that he wasn't in his room, since he was always there when Seth was his student. Rafe started scanning the room, thinking it was empty, and Seth suggested they wait a moment. The Rate saw something on a box that at first looked like a stone. It looked like a magic gem, so he wanted to examine it more closely. A gruff shout demanded to know who was there. A bearded old man stepped out, claimed the room as his research space, and forbade them to act freely. Seth greeted Helga, who. He recognized him. Seth was happy and remembered being held. Him noting that he was a particularly bright student. Helga was nothing like Wraith had imagined, and he found Seth's earlier reaction confusing. Suddenly Helga started moving around while Wrath watched him. Observed that Wrath seemed very young as he. He said he had heard of him and knew his name. Helga seemed to have a personal interest in Wrath because, since arriving in the capital from nowhere, he had built a reputation as unusually skilled for his age, making elixirs and even saving adventurers with them. Those were his most significant achievements. People also said he had a strong connection to dreams. Wraith was stunned that so much about him was widely known. When he began to see this as positive, Helga warned that he would not acknowledge Wraith's abilities until he had seen them for himself, nor would he let Wrath get too confident. Wrath noticed how strict Helga was. Wrath glanced at Seth. People who put on fake smiles. Helga spotted Wraith standing there, scolded him again for falling behind, and told him to come over. Wrath followed and wondered if he'd be okay working there. Whispering to Seth, he asked why they had to move just to talk about the job. Fearing he'd done something wrong, he thought Helga was angry because they had entered his room uninvited. Seth reassured him it wasn't a problem, and knowing Helga, he figured she was bothered because Rafe was the same age as the students. Stunned, Wrath realized he could not change his age. Seth chuckled and said Helga wasn't a bad person, so Wrath shouldn't worry too much. Helga said they had arrived. Keith asked where they were, and the place looked like a training ground. Helga said he would test Wraith there. Wraith looked surprised. Seth. They avoided eye contact because they hadn't warned Wraith about the test. Wraith vowed to remember this, waited for Helga's instructions, and then Helga instructed him to build a golem. Golems were dolls powered by gem cores that let them move on their own. Wrath couldn't understand why he was being tested on this, because tests usually focused on potion making, weapon enhancement, or crafting magical devices. He wondered what Helga was thinking. Helga said the gall didn't have to be big, it just had to move well. Helga gave him a small magic gem. Wraith felt anxious because he had never made a golem before. He knew. Despite knowing the theory, he still felt nervous and was sweating. Helga stayed tuned and asked whether he planned to do it. Go to the training ground. Wrath knew that admitting he'd never made a lead golem would mean instant failure. He chose to try. Wrath inhaled and concentrated on shaping the golem. Detail and imagination mattered most. Visualizing the final form was essential to golem alchemy. The magic gem would supply the energy, but if the body wasn't built well, the gown's movements would suffer, and in the worst case, the gown could run wild, which he was desperate to stop. Tightening the magicum, he started the procedure. Seth looked anxious as Rafe began the transfer. During the formation phase, Helga was struck by the beauty of his work. Instantly, Wrath formed a wolf gum. Examining the gum, Helga noted its lifelike appearance and remarkable craftsmanship. In all his years teaching alchemy, he had never seen a gum like this. I wonder how many attempts it took to perfect such a creation. Wraith said he hoped it wasn't too bad for a first try. Seeing Hel's stunned expression, he feared he had made a mistake. Seth was astonished that Wrath had achieved this on his first try, but Hel remained skeptical. He argued that not even a lifelong genius could have produced what Wrath had just created. No ordinary person could reach that level no matter how long they trained, yet he was expected to believe it was Wraith's first try. Overcome with nerves, Wraith didn't know how to respond and apologized. In Helga's room, they sat in silence while Helga looked downcast. While discussing how he handled the test, Wraith asked softly what they should do next. Seth criticized him for not recognizing his own talent, and Helva then said she had no issues with his work. For now, he would cover the class material. Their first lesson would focus on the goal and construction, and he outlined the process. They explained the steps, practiced them, then used the gallons for sword and magic training. Helga said Rafe would help prepare the training and answer student questions. Wraith was also responsible for conducting demonstrations, along with other duties. Knowing his role, he asked to leave for health reasons and mentioned another task. Wrath said it was his first time making a golem, so he was told to practice with it until class. If he had any doubts, they were about the stone wraith he had been curious about earlier. He asked whether it was a magic gem and then held it. They confirmed that it was. Wraiths thanked them and left. From his room, Helga watched them leave the academy, wondering why he gave Wrath an unresponsive item he could not process himself. He realized he had let his emotions cloud his judgment about his age. He hoped Wrath would achieve what he most wanted. Back home, Wrath thought about what kind of gold to create with the magic gem. Sylvia was sure his creation would be impressive. Wraith said Helva gave no guidance on the gall's form or materials, which made the decision difficult. He asked Lurie for her opinion, and she suggested making. It sounded cool, but she gave no details. Feeling inspired, Wraith set out to create something exciting for the students. Lathe proposed a goal that wasn't suited to sword or magic training, urging him to add features to counter those skills. He agreed with her idea, and she enthusiastically suggested choosing between a humanoid and a monstrous form. Wrath had an idea and set a clear goal, and when Lathy asked if he felt uneasy, Wrath explained his plan to turn it into a transformative goal. Luria himself was puzzled and unsure it could be done. Luria admitted she'd never built a transforming golem, but believed Wrath might succeed. Wrath admitted he wasn't sure how to do it. Luria tried to leave, but he stopped her and reminded her she had nowhere to go. Lathe asked whether he actually had a plan to create it. She knew the race's abilities, but creating something entirely new would be a challenge even for him. Though he claimed to be clueless, he had a plan. Because it was an experiment, they could freely test any ideas. The creation needed a sturdy material to serve as a practice dummy, one that could change shape easily and let magical energy flow through it so it could move. They chose Nithril, which Wrath had used before on Sylvia's projects. Applying the thrill to the golem would likely mean they'd need to tweak it carefully. Rafe took out a magic gem and immediately created a humanoid golem. It was so lifelike it could be mistaken for a real person. Lathe was intrigued by the gong. Wrath told her to strike it lightly and be careful not to damage it. Luffy swung with one hand. The golem blocked her blade. Trying again, she managed to cut it. Wraith asked Sylvia to test it with a gentle magic attack. Sylvia's standard spell failed to harm the golem, despite holding back. A golem that could withstand attacks from ranked adventurers like Lathe and Sylvia was exceptional, especially for training use. Sylvia admired Wraith's creation. Wrath adjusted it, and the gold changed by itself, a feat that even Luria found astonishing. Before long, the human golem became a wolf golem. Wraith, proud of his work, began chasing it playfully as things quickly unfolded. Sylvia and Luria tried to figure out his methods. Then Luria asked whether Rafe planned to bring the goal into the academy. Luria doubted he could take it there, though he wondered if that would be a problem. The Golon's power came from a magic gem inside it. When the gem ran out of energy, the Golon stopped until the gem was recharged. The wolf suddenly collapsed, its energy gone. Rafe asked Helva to recharge it with her magic before they went to the academy. Gloria agreed, noting it would need regular recharging, and she could not always travel to the academy, so they would likely have to store the goal here. Wreath looked disappointed, so they tried to cheer him up, but he brushed them off. He realized he had to accept that his time with Liquid Niquin was over. On his first day at the academy, Wreath got lost while wondering, a luscious one spotted him and wanted to know who he was. Despite searching everywhere, Wrath still could not find his destination, and the students began to suspect him as he considered his next move. Alicia walked over and asked what he was doing. He said he started working there today. She already knew and asked where he was headed. He said he needed help with his workshop, following a list shot. Wrath noticed she looked like Seth and pointed out their matching hair color, eye placement, and facial features. Staring at him, she asked what he thought of her brother. Wrath said Seth was a dependable friend who always helped him. Alicia found his reply odd and turned away, quietly pleased. Wrath was genuine, unlike the others who tried to use her brother. She led him to Helga's workshop and said she was looking forward to their classes before she left. Keith knocked, then went in. He was furious because Wrath was late on his first day. He apologized and said he had gotten lost. Helga said their lessons began today, starting with theory rather than practical work to ease him in. Skipping most classes let him avoid overexertion. Wraith was determined to give his all when the practical lessons began. Helped. Who asked about the magic gem she had given him. Wrath said he used it to create an energy-efficient golem, which he saw as neither a clear success nor a failure. Helga was amazed he could make a goal using that gem. Wrath remembered his past failures, was stunned by what he heard, and decided to focus. Put it off until later. He said he would introduce himself soon. They left the workshop for Wraith's first class, where he planned to make a strong impression as the assistant teacher. Though he's not here, 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 he's not here. He's not here, 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 he's not here. He's not here, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, 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 I'm sorry. I'm sorry, 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 I'm sorry. Wrath felt nervous under the students' gazes, wanted to flee but couldn't, and tried to calm himself by listening to Helga. Unable to follow her words, he finally came in, and Helga introduced him as the temporary teacher, looking to him for a response. A Wraith stood trembling and sweating, so Helga had to prompt Wraith again to snap him out of it. After introducing himself, he promised to share his knowledge diligently during his time there. A student raised her hand. She asked if he had been the suspicious figure seen earlier that morning. Having seen him with Alicia, she wanted to know what their connection was. Flustered, Wraith explained he had been walking around to learn his new students' faces, apologized, and said Alicia was only an acquaintance, which only confused the class more because he had just claimed a connection to one of the 4 great noble families. Helga stepped in and said Wraith was simply lost, and his hesitation probably made him look suspicious. His quirk seemed familiar, so she turned her attention to the lesson. From day one, Wraith was saddled with the nickname of the temporary teacher who got lost and was linked to a noble family. Helvet explained the magic gem's vital role in creating a golem, saying it is the power source and core of its function, and that the golem would stop if the gem broke or lost energy. Wraith felt relieved to have no immediate tasks, but he knew the material now being taught came from the practical experience he gained under his mentor Lucia. Helva led the class to the training grounds for an early practice before the exciting race, who saw an opportunity to make up for his awkward introduction by helping. Wrath told the students to bring their questions, but they seemed skeptical of his skills after he got lost earlier. He told himself that answering questions well would make them think better of him, but the students could build gons on their own, leaving him standing idle. Convinced their opinions wouldn't change, he started looking for students who might need help. Wratham spotted a girl who looked confused. I offered to help, but she declined. He approached others who either turned him away or told him to consult Helga. Seeing they were avoiding him, Wraith and Alicia sighed together. When he asked what was wrong, she said classmates had been bombarding her with questions about her relationship with him. Wrath apologized, and Alicia reassured him that it wasn't his fault and told him not to dwell on it. Wrath said others were avoiding him, and he was unsure how to respond. Alicia noted they could not change his image as a suspicious figure and questioned why his skills were doubted. Rafe admitted he still hadn't shown them his skills. Alicia invited him to meet her at her place for the next practical lesson. Wrath, wanting to know her intentions, asked why, but she ignored him and left. She kept thinking about her motives until the lesson ended. After he visited Daisy's shop, Daisy said that someone assumed he was too busy to stop by. Wrath said he had some free time and decided to drop in. Daisy asked if it was okay for him to leave his shop, and Wrath said Lucia was managing it and teased him about what he'd messed up this time. Annoyed, Wraith asked her to stop making confusing comments. Daisy then asked if he had mass-produced elixirs. Wrath said he had recently taken a temporary teaching job at the Magic Academy, but students spread that he got lost and was late on his first day. Daisy bluntly asked if he was foolish as desperate Wrath begged for help to restore his reputation, and she wondered why he had come to her. Ruth noted that if he asked Lucia for help, Lucia would hold it over him, while Daisy would give honest feedback right away. To restore his reputation, she suggested he prove himself as an alchemist. Wraith realized he would have to wait until the next practical lesson to do it. Wraith, instead of asking Daisy how she's been, noting, lately he hadn't helped in her shop or taught her alchemy. She offered to show him her progress because it would be faster. They went into a room where Daisy used Lamo as she. When they first met, they brewed a medium-quality potion, and Wrath wondered how much she had improved since then. Daisy began brewing a potion, and he noticed she moved much more smoothly. With her hard work evident, Wraith examined the potion after finishing and was amazed. The work was high quality. He praised Daisy for running her shop alone and improving her skills so much in less than a year. Daisy blushed and said she might surpass him one day, and Wrath looked forward to it. Returning to his shop, he found Lucia sitting and looking troubled. When asked, Lucia said her maniflo fell off. Wraith asked if anything had happened, and she said there were no ill effects yet, but it felt like a small bone stuck in her throat. Worried, he asked her to investigate further. Lucia said the problem was subtle and hard for most mages to notice or study. Wraith suggested they could ignore it for now unless it caused harm. Lucia agreed and asked how his day at school went. His face made it clear it hadn't gone well when Lafayette and Sylvia arrived, shocked to see him so downcast. Lucia said she had only asked about school, and he became upset. Blackie pushed for details, and Wraith admitted the students were avoiding him. Explaining further, he said a series of incidents had caused their distrust, and he wasn't sure what he'd done wrong. Frustrated, he impulsively quit his job. As an assistant, his role was simply to support Helga, and at worst that was all he had to do. Thinking it was foolish to overthink, he decided to go along with things. Sylvia reassured him he would be fine. His mana flow had been unusual recently, she pointed out. Wrath noted it wasn't causing any problems, so there was nothing to worry about. When he checked in with Lathe about how she was doing, she said that thanks to him Ariel had become much calmer and things were quite peaceful. Pleased to hear this, he laughed and felt encouraged to reach out if he needed any help. He thanked her and said he'd come by when the time came. At dinner on the second day of practical lessons, Ruth saw that the students were still ignoring him. Still, he had to admire how inventive they were with their guns. Thinking their perspectives might just differ from his, he headed toward Alicia. Finding her staring at the magic gem in her hand, he noticed the other students already crafting their guns and asked Alicia what was wrong, thinking she was falling behind. She insisted she wasn't slacking, handed him a magic gem, and said they needed to prove his abilities. Taking a deep breath, she announced that Wraith would give a demonstration. Although skeptical about Wraith's skills, the students were eager to see what would happen. Seeing his chance, Wraiths moved to change their minds and told Alicia to trust him. He asked her to step back to give him room to look at it. He overheard their critical remarks about him within seconds. Wraithcrafted is a stunning cat golem that amazes everyone. The golem seemed almost alive, its fur as realistic as a live animal's. Students started to wonder whether their teacher had always been this skilled. Alicia, equally stunned, had heard from her brother about Wraith's extraordinary talents, but she hadn't imagined they were this impressive. The gong was so lifelike that it became more than a doll and felt like creating life itself. Most gallons weren't meant to move much, which helped durability. Crafting a golem with the precise internal structure for movement was a rare skill. Even a tiny flaw could make a golem's body shatter under forceful motion, so Wraith's golem was far beyond what any typical alchemist could achieve. Surprised, he saw none of the reaction he had hoped for, even though he thought he'd done a decent job. He asked Alicia whether his demonstration was okay, and she admitted she'd probably underestimated him and now understood her brother's point of view. Wrath was confused and asked her to clarify, but her repeated explanation still left him puzzled, and that surprised her even more. Race. His feat didn't impress her, and that made her admire her brother even more. Later, a student with a flushed face came up to Wrath. Her stammer confused him, then she explained her goal. His body had broken, and she couldn't fix it. Relieved it was only a class issue, Wrath said the likely cause was insufficient focus on compression. Her mentor told her to focus more on that aspect when making the golem, and on her next attempt, she succeeded in creating a golem that didn't break. During his demonstration for Alicia, students kept asking him questions, and being called sensei felt awkward. Helva called them over, said they were moving on to the main part of the lesson to craft golems as practice dummies, and asked if he could demonstrate again. Drawing on his experience with Lathe and Sylvia, Wrath used his time efficiently to craft a humanoid golem that lacked transformation capabilities. Embedding a magic gem, he effortlessly formed a detailed humanoid figure. The student remained consistently amazed by his goal of developing skills. Helva told Alicia to test the goal by attacking it with her magic. Alicia unleashed a blast of wind magic at the gauntlet. It remained unharmed. The students were surprised to find the goal had no damage. Alicia, the group's strongest magic user, was stunned when her attack did nothing. For the first time, her magic failed against a simple dirt golem. Visibly frustrated, Alicia glared at Wrath and asked what was unusual about the golem. Confused, Wrath said he had only made a standard gong. Alicia began reprimanding him publicly. As she scolded him, the students grew anxious that she would hold them to the same standard and expect them to make similar gongs. Helga stepped in, calmed them, and explained she hadn't expected them to do such advanced work. A week later, Wrath was puzzled to see students forcefully attacking their own gongs with magic. The training ground looked like a battlefield. He stepped aside to avoid the chaos but still noticed. The gongs broke easily. Despite being made of dirt, he had expected them to use metal or mithril for the test. Wrath wondered if there was enough mithril for all the students. Will appeared suddenly, startling Wrath, He kept acting coolly. When asked why he was there, Will reminded him he was the school chairman. Will said he was checking on his new employee and asked about progress on the rates. Wraith admitted things had been hard, but Will had expected him to be thriving. Wrath laughed nervously and said he faced some hurdles, but was working hard. Will was pleased to hear this and stared at Wraith's face for a moment without explaining why. Wrath excused himself when Alicia called. As she approached Alicia, she noticed he looked uneasy talking to Will. Wrath hadn't noticed his behavior, but Alicia said that even though he looked calm, she could tell he was uncomfortable. This made Wrath uneasy. Alice should explain that her time as a member of the 4 great noble families gave her this insight, a skill she picked up without meaning to. Rafe was surprised to find that Seth lacked that perception and wondered whether Will had noticed his discomfort too. Alicia believed Will probably did. Wraith decided not to hide his feelings if Will already knew. Alicia confirmed that Will and Wraith knew each other. Wraith. It was described as an unwanted coincidental connection, but Alicia doubted Will had met the person by chance. Ruth thanked Alicia, mentioning her earlier request for a demonstration. That moment helped and earned the students' respect. Alicia said it was necessary and appreciated his effort. She hoped things would proceed smoothly unless issues arose. Wrath said she hoped the next day would be uneventful. Outside the chairman's office, Wraith gathered the courage to enter. Will waited for him, sensing Wraith's curiosity about the summons. He told Wraith to relax, saying he only needed a favor Will had asked. To help maintain the school's property. Wraith asked for clarification. Will said it was straightforward. Recent alchemy lessons damaged the training grounds. He was right, the grounds were in poor shape after the previous day's class. Wrath, hired as an assistant alchemy teacher, felt this extra work was not part of his job. About to decline, he agreed when Will said he would pay him to do it. Will noted how fast he worked and said his efforts were aimed at creating a good learning space for the students. He did whatever it took to earn extra money, taking any extra pay he could get. He spent his days steadily maintaining the school's facilities. Recently, students have been flooding him with questions and requests because the final test was scheduled for the next practical class. The student kept asking questions without stopping. Faith ran an after-school test prep session today to support them. Posting the announcement at the last minute, he didn't expect a big turnout. He was surprised to find the classroom packed with students. Impressed, he had only been assisting with Helga's lessons, so he hadn't led his own and felt nervous. He told each student to take a box and said he would explain the next steps. After everyone got their boxes, he told him to shape the dirt in his box into a ball. The students will not be able to do it. 200 if that was all, since it seemed simple. Someone thought he might check their work individually, but he clarified that checking was the day's task. They felt confident and thought they had finished quickly. They tried but couldn't make it work, and the dirt wouldn't budge. Rafe noted they'd probably already realized it wasn't ordinary dirt. It came from the southern continent, where the magical energy had been drained. Certain soils attract magical energy, while others repel it. Wrath had chosen that type of soil. He told them they could quit if they wanted, and that he would answer any questions if they raised their hands. Many questions arose. Alicia said the dirt would not move at all and doubted it was possible. Seeing their skepticism, he asked them to gather around and demonstrated. He quickly formed a ball of dirt, and Alicia asked if there was a trick. Explained that they could force more magic into it or be very precise. The dirt resists magic, so it won't move as they want unless they push more magical energy into it, as he mentioned. He told them to focus on each speck of dirt when it resisted their magic, and they could not control it normally. They had to be precise to overcome it. The exercise aimed to build their strength. Success depends on technique, and only those who master alchemy basics will succeed. Alicia is focused and fair. She finally got the dirt to shift slightly, but keeping it moving was hard, and she doubted they could do it in one day. At least she felt shaping it was impossible. He wondered if he'd set the goal too high. Alicia agreed. Wraith simplified the task and told them to just move the dirt. After the special session ended, everyone worked hard. Despite the late hour, he still had to take care of the school's facilities. He suddenly spotted a pauper on the turning ground. He wondered whether it was from another lesson and whether there were more marks. In the next scene, he chose to follow them. Wraith came home after a tough day at work and was greeted by Laffy, Liu, Rhymes, and Sue. Dinnet stood ready while they waited for him. After thanking them, he began eating, laughed, and asked about school and things were fine, he said, and he mentioned the upcoming test and that he stayed late to answer students' questions. Laffy, in a playful tone, called him a great teacher. Too embarrassed to answer, he stayed silent. Lucia teased him more, calling him sensitive as they began to bicker loudly. Sylvia noticed the odd feeling in the magic flow was gone. Lucia paused and said it had suddenly disappeared. Wraith asked if they had found the cause, but they hadn't. Laughter shifted the topic to the test he had mentioned earlier. He said it was a goal and construction test and wasn't directly involved. Being a temporary teacher, Wrath would not grade the test but would help the students prepare for it. Lucia teased him lightly about his commitment. Faith dismissed the remarks and said he had also started maintaining the school's facilities while he was working. Lafayette said she was happy for him and sure he would do well. Finally, test day was here. Ruth said it was a perfect day for it. The students gathered at the training ground, visibly nervous. After confirming everyone was present, Helga began the exam, which focused on quickly building a strong goal. Students lost points for taking too long, and the fastest finished their goals in 5 minutes. Next was the durability test, using light magic to check the gallant's sturdiness. When it was Alice's turn, Wraith watched her closely. She built an impressive golem and tested it at full strength. Alice built the golem in 3 minutes, and it held up perfectly. She met Helga's high standards. Afterward, Alicia went to Wrath and asked how she'd done. Confused, Wrath asked her to repeat the question. She wanted to know how she did on the test, and he told her she seemed to be outperforming everyone. Since it came from Wrath, the praise felt underwhelming to Valesha. Wrath insisted he meant it as a compliment. Suddenly, Alicia felt a strange current of magic, like the one Sylvia and Lucia had felt. She said it didn't happen the day before. Unable to pinpoint the cause, Wrath speculated it was a magical anomaly. Reassuring Alicia, he said it was probably nothing, though he doubted it was a coincidence given how often it was mentioned. After school, Ray was fixing the training ground. Noticed the paw prints again. Chose to investigate. I followed them until they suddenly stopped. It revealed no details about the magic flow or the mysterious prints. The next day, Helder was furious to discover the students' gallons were destroyed. The students poured their hearts into their creations, which only fueled her anger. Wrath recommended reporting it to Will's right away. In Will's office, they found out there were no witnesses. The night guard saw nothing suspicious, and no other reports surfaced. Will urged them to examine the broken gongs for clues. Inspection suggested magical destruction, making it unlikely that human hands could have caused the damage. He found the gem's magical energy completely drained. Magic gems don't lose their charge on their own, so someone must have drained their power on purpose. For now, they postponed further investigation because Will has increased his security personnel and lessons are starting. Later, Rafe spoke with Lucia about the incident. Faith admitted his limited magical knowledge and wondered if anything would require gathering so much magical energy. Lucia said extracting energy directly from magic gems was rare because without storage, the energy had to be used immediately. She asked if there were any signs of it, but he said there were none. Lucia was equally clueless. Graith was troubled that even Lucia, an expert in magic, did not know about it, so he decided to inspect the golems he had made earlier for clues. Reaching the storage room to check it, he was shocked by what he had done. What he found inside. In the next scene of Lucia and Lucia, Ratsum stood up and said, emphasized that this was critical and asked them to pay close attention. He stayed composed until then but began to panic. He revealed his liquid MC1 was missing. Lucia looked puzzled, so Luria explained that the gone wraith had created it. Lucia then asked why it had disappeared and whether it had left on its own. That was exactly what Wraith wanted to know. The gulm didn't even contain magic, which was. That made it strange. He remembered people saying they had sensed an odd disturbance in the magic flow. When he asked Luria, she said the magic flow here stabilized yesterday, and he then asked when the irregularity began. Luria seemed to understand what he meant. Wrath said the magic flow was disrupted right after he made liquid MC1, and a similar problem had been affecting the Magic Academy since yesterday. His liquid Macoon was likely the source of the magical disturbance, having somehow flooded into the Magic Academy. About the golem destruction at the Magic Academy, the attacker drained all the magical energy from the gems of the shattered goms. If an energy-hungry, inefficient golem was responsible. If it needed magical energy to survive, he would be responsible, so he decided to summon Lathe and the others for help. After briefing the girls on the situation, he asked for their help to stop the rogue gulm. Sylvia saw this as a disaster. Lathy said handling a go crafted by Wraith would be a major hassle. Lucius wanted nothing more than to stay home and rest. Wrath had relied on all of them and said he was deeply sorry for the situation. Lafay didn't really blame him because no one had ever heard O'Gallan move on his own. Wrath hoped nobody would trace the gallant back to him if they did. They didn't report it until the last moment. We're going to get to know you. Thank you very much for joining us today. He laughed and countered that its unique abilities would make it obvious, on reflection. Even if they didn't use it, this could be useful. Latvia announced they were leaving. Wraith picked up a book and joined the group to pursue the goal he'd created. At the academy, tight security blocked them. Rafe came up with a plan to slip past the guards. He then suggested an idea and asked Floria for a favor. 10 minutes later. Everyone was wearing academy uniforms. Wrath said this was just to get through the main gate. Now looking like other students, he thought they had no problems. A security guard asked why they were there, and Wrath said he had forgotten something. The guard doubted the whole group had come back for one student's item. Thinking they might need school supplies, he suggested using magical disguises to help them pass. Relying on the uniforms as a guide, Wraith was unsure but watched the guard's reaction and saw them enter without trouble. Inside, the schoolrooms noted the boldness of his plan. Ray admitted he was impressed that she pulled it off, especially for someone in her late 20s. Lathe asked what their next steps should be. Rate said they would go to the place where the broken gallons were stored to look for clues. The guard was still standing outside the going storage room. Laughter wondered whether the school had already identified the culprit, and Luria advised they leave before they were caught. Wraith insisted on going further and asked Luria to use her magic to find the gulms. Sylvie had been trying to detect magic since they arrived at the school, but she hadn't detected anything until a strange, magical sensation suddenly washed over her. They went into the backyard to check, but no gallons were in sight. Sylvia felt puzzled because she was certain the magical energy came from that area. Luria confirmed the presence remained nearby. Wrath worried the goal might have slipped away. Sylvia and Luria still believed it was nearby. Oddly, the Golan's magical energy kept shifting. If it had been moving that much, they or the security guards would have noticed it by now. Wraith realized the guard they were looking for was the golem itself. Wraith gripped the guard's shoulder and warned him not to take on new abilities without anyone noticing. The man turned and his body suddenly began to melt. They watched in shock as he transformed into his true form, a liquid-made Wangalum. Everyone, even Wrath, was confused. A possible explanation was that the Goa might be absorbing magic or had some other unknown trait, somehow gaining new abilities as. While they debated how it was possible, the liquid MC1 golden bolted. Lafayette Chase and the town of Swansea. And its throat, not its nest. Wraith urged Luria and Sylvia to use their magic because the Golan looked tough to beat. Their spells did nothing. Wraith asked Luria to magically seal the Gaul and its surroundings to trap it, while "thank you very much" was repeated many times. Luria worked to capture it. They used a lathe to keep the Galm from escaping. Wrath ordered Laffy to strike again with her sword. She hit while saying it didn't matter. He wanted to test something. The gallant dodged her blade again. Wraith realized they couldn't land physical hits, and it was also negating magical attacks. So with Luria and the others' magic useless, he had no choice but to rely on Laffy, and it felt odd that such an agile golem would bother posing as a human. Assuming his theory was right, Lathe would soon score a hit. His hunch was right. Laffy struck the Garm. Ray pointed out that golms need magical energy to move, and Liquid Micron was running low, so it was targeting magic gems and student-made golms. No such gems were nearby to restore its energy, and the golem's slowing movements showed it was weakening. Laffy's attacks were landing. Wrath was confident they could win. As a golem, it couldn't function without magical energy, so draining that energy in combat would lead to its defeat. The golem turned into an armored soldier and addressed them. Wrath reeled at the gallant's abilities, and Laffy suggested talking to it to stop the fight, but the gallant said it would be pointless. Ray realized lathes might get tired before the golem's man, Arandri. He called Laffy back sometime in the. Lucia instructed Lucia and Sylvia to keep the Gon occupied with physical spells. Luffy came back and asked if Wreath had a plan. Unsure it would work, he shared a strategy. They agreed to try it, and Latvian joined Sylvia and Lucia. They engaged the gallant to distract it, while Lucia was away. Look for openings to attack with ice magic balls. The golem's expectation nullified the magic. At that moment, Wrath used his transformation ability to hide an object inside a ball. They emerged to strike, featuring the magic gem glow. It triggered an explosion that knocked them all down. Now much larger, the golem loomed over them. Lucia realized the strange flow of mana was caused by the golem of drawing magical energy from its surroundings. Wrath asked, and she said it might restore its own magical energy. Only having that strategy made Wraith anxious. Lucia doubted it could absorb enough mana to keep all its operations running. The golem went after the students' gallons to absorb more mana. They had to either wait for its mana to run out or aim for its magic gem. Rafe trembled even though he wasn't fighting, while Laffy charged the golem again. The fight was intense, and the golem's bigger size slowed it down. Laugh. Struggling to keep the golem distracted, I asked for a plan but got none. They noted that destroying its magic gem would require help. Its larger size made it an easier target, but its durability made it hard to damage. Lucia told everyone to clear the area while she got ready. Do a powerful spell. Wraith was worried about damaging the school, but Lucia brushed it off, saying they could fix it later. She enclosed him in a magic sphere despite his objections and urged him to stay put, having stopped holding back to avoid trouble after Lucia's massive. During the attack, Lathe and Wraith hoped the gong had been destroyed, thinking it could not survive such a blast. When the smoke cleared the gong, he stood with one broken arm that still radiated power. Wrath had run out of ideas, and Laffy doubted her sword could hurt it now. Rafe concluded their only option was to touch the golem's magic gem to disable it. Although it required teamwork, he hesitated to put everyone at greater risk. But the girls were already committed and showed their resolve. Rafe gathered his courage and told them to hold the goal still so he could approach it. Lucia, Sylvia, Lathe, and Lucia attacked one after another. This gives Wraith a chance to reach the magic gem. Start shutting it down. The gong fought back, draining his mana. This made the task difficult. The creator of the golems was furious. Wraith pushed harder and eventually succeeded, causing the collapse. Exhausted from the mana drain, he could barely stand. They will release it. Trouble grew when Will's guards arrived. Ray ended up in Helga's room as she apologized. Wraith stepped in to interrupt and comfort Helga, but she kept insisting. Investigators found the Gallon's rampage was caused by a faulty magic gem Helga had given Wrath. If Helga had been unaware of the defect, the incident could have been dismissed as an accident. Helga had given a flawed gem to make Wraith fail and feel discouraged, but his exceptional alchemy let him build a golem from it, and her jealousy combined with his talent unleashed chaos. Helvet acknowledged it would be unfair to expect Wraiths to pay for the school's damages and promised to take care of it. Rafe then went to Will's office, where Will noted Helga's genuine remorse and called him a good person. Will assured Wrath he would not be held responsible for the incident and praised his remarkable alchemical skills. When Will asked if Ruth wanted to continue teaching, Wrath thought about his friends outside of work, turning down the offer politely. Unsurprised, Will told him the door was always open for him. Rafe started cleaning up the mess they had made after exchanging a glance. When she asked how things had turned out, he said the Golem's magic gem had a problem. No one held him responsible for the incident, and he had stopped teaching. Taken aback, Lucia questioned whether he was really cut out for teaching, and pointed out that his lack of friends could make it hard to support students with their issues. Wraith shrugged it off, saying he had Laffy and others, and Lucia said she was genuinely happy he had found good people in the capital. When Wrath asked what she meant by that comment, Luri said it was time for her to leave. Confused at first, he asked where she was headed, and she said she was going outside the capital. Wrath felt annoyed by her sudden announcements, but he knew they were part of her nature. Playfully, she teased him, asked if he'd missed her, and then he'd. She grew serious and said she had seen her disciple mature and was ready to resume her travels. Wreath suggested we throw a farewell party. Pleased, she teased him again. 2 weeks have passed since the Gallin chaos. Mimi's farewell party was held, with Wrath preparing delicious food and creating a festive atmosphere. They handed Luria a glass of champagne, and everyone toasted the end of Rate's teaching days. This is the start of Luria's new adventure, full of laughter, food, drinks, and fun.